Chapter 2296. The basilica was empty, spacious, and clean. The white floor emitted a soft light, and the antique tables and chairs seemed to have a faint fragrance that calmed one's mind. A slender and thin elder in a purple robe sat quietly in the armchair in the center. He looked at Chu Li with a gentle gaze. "Peak leader, this is Chu Li." Zheng Weixin smiled. "A talented man, right?" "Junior brother Zheng Go." The elder in the purple robe waved his hand. "I'll talk to him alone." "Yes." Zheng Weixin left respectfully. Chu Li took the opportunity to look at the elder. This was the peak leader of Taihao Peak, Wang Shoren. His figure was slender and thin, and his facial features were sharp. He must have been a handsome man when he was young. His long beard fluttered in the wind, and he had a sage-like demeanor. His temperament was clear and extraordinary, as if he was an immortal. Chu Li closed-fist saluted. "Peak leader." "Sit." Wang Shoren waved his hand. Chu Li sat in the armchair next to him. Wang Shoren looked at him and smiled. "Is Jianfei doing well in the heavenly demonic realm?" Chu Li nodded. "He found Miss Lu. They're living happily. He's going to stay there for a year." Wang Shoren shook his head and sighed. "I can't do anything about his infatuation. I can only let him be." "Thank you, Chu Li." Chu Li said, "It's good that the peak leader doesn't blame me. Back then, I was also forced to do so. However, the two of them loved each other deeply, and I couldn't bear to force them apart. However, it's difficult to satisfy both sides in this world, so I can only let them suffer." Wang Shoren slowly said, "It couldn't be better for the two of them to meet again." Chu Li said, "Peak leader, aren't you worried that Senior Lu will leak the secrets of the peak? The heavenly demonic realm is everywhere. He knows everything he needs to know. It doesn't matter if it's a secret or not." Wang Shoren said. "Moreover, I believe that no matter how muddle-headed Jianfei is, he won't betray Taihao Peak." Chu Li nodded. Although Lu Jianfei was infatuated with her, he was extremely loyal to Great Sky Peak. Otherwise, he would not have allowed the Peak Lord to separate them back then. There was always a bit of resentment, but as he met Yang Qingmeng, his resentment also vanished like smoke in thin air. Wang Shoren said, "I heard you're going to fight Song Wuji with Kai Wei?" Chu Li was startled and slowly nodded. Wang Shoren sighed. "I have never poured cold water on Kai Wei, because this goal will motivate her to work hard, which is a good thing. But now I have to say it." Chu Li looked at him as if he was all ears. Wang Shoren said, "Song Wuji is the #1 expert in the Grandmaster realm." Chu Li nodded. He knew how terrifying Song Wuji was, especially now that his cultivation had reached this level. He discovered that he had already stepped into the top ranks, and the elders of Great Sky Peak were already inferior to him. He could even compete with the Supreme Lord of Azura. However, it was still very dangerous for him to deal with Song Wuji, and he had no chance of winning. This was an omen from his divination technique, and it could be seen how terrifying Song Wuji was. Wang Shoren frowned and said, "He has always wanted to become a great deity, but unfortunately, it is not so easy to become a great deity, so he has been in seclusion. Now that I think about it, it has probably been a year." "A year of seclusion?" Chu Li was surprised. The time of seclusion needed to be suitable. If it was too short, he could not calm down, but if it was too long, it would dry up his heart like an old well. Not only would it not be good, but it would also be harmful, especially for those who had cultivated to their level. If they were impatient, their inner energy would react, and it would hurt their body, which would be detrimental to their cultivation. Wang Shoren said, "Every time he meditates, it takes 10 days to half a month. To him, a year of seclusion feels like a month. It is not too long." Chu Li thought about it. No wonder. He had always wondered why Song Wuji did not do anything to him, as if he did not even know of his existence or was too lazy to care about him. He had greatly offended Song Wuji, took care of many of his subordinates, and even went against his descendants. It was impossible for Song Wuji not to feel his hostility and threat, so how could he not take the initiative to deal with him? He had always been secretly on guard, but he did not expect it to be because of Song Wuji's seclusion. The Outland can be safe because he is a great deterrent to Azura and Heavenly Demon, Wang Shoren said. Otherwise, we may not be able to deal with Azura and Heavenly Demon. Chu Li slowly nodded. He now understood the strength of the top-notch experts in the Beyond Heavenly Realm, and he also understood the High Lords of Azura. Once a High Lord brought a group of great Azuras into the Beyond Heavenly Realm, the Beyond Heavenly Realm might not be able to withstand them. Wang Shoren said, "Kai Wei is a genius and so are you. The two of you together will not be able to defeat Song Wuji." Chu Li frowned and said, "Is it because he has cultivated longer and is more talented?" "Because his luck is good enough," Wang Shoren said. He became the master of the Thunder Pool, which is also one of the 9 divisions, but the Thunder Pool is different from other places. It is independent and we dare not provoke it. Chu Li was confused. Wang Shoren said, "The formation of the Thunder Pool comes from the upper heaven. The spiritual energy of the upper heaven condensed to form the Thunder Pool, so the Thunder Pool and the upper heaven are inextricably linked." After Song Wuji became the master of the Thunder Pool, he not only cultivated the heart technique of the upper heaven, but also the spiritual energy of the upper heaven. As for the antique study of the upper heaven of the Tai Hao Peak, because we can't get the spiritual energy of the upper heaven, we only have the form, but not the spirit. Our power is not the same. Chu Li nodded and said, "Seems like it is indeed difficult to deal with." The disciples of the Thunder Pool cultivate the antique study of the upper heaven, and use the spiritual energy of the upper heaven? Only Song Wuji. How can the spiritual energy of the upper heaven be so cheap? Whoever wants to use it, Wang Shoren said. The disciples of the Thunder Pool are similar to the other 8 divisions, they are inferior to us. Chu Li said, "If that is the case we can only give up and there is no other way? Even the peak leader can't defeat Song Wuji?" "I am no match for him," Wang Shoren said gently. "His level is not something that can be accumulated over the years. Even if you live for 1,000 or 10,000 years, you will not be able to train to his level. I have personally experienced how scary he is." Chu Li's eyebrows twitched. Wang Shoren said, "I was almost struck into charcoal, luckily he was merciful." Chu Li sighed and said, "It seems like we are no match for him." "We can't outsmart him either," Wang Shoren said. "Song Wuji is a very intelligent person, and his methods are swift and fierce. Moreover, the Thunder Pool is like an iron plate, there are no flaws." Chu Li said, "But senior sister Fu will not give up. I will find an excuse to trap her for a few more years, to train for a few more years," Wang Shoren said. Wang Shoren said, "Chu Li, you can't do that, I can't stop you, that is why I am telling you this." Chu Li slowly said, "Don't worry, peak leader, I know the severity of the situation." Wang Shoren sighed and said, "You and Kai Wei are rare geniuses, as long as you train well, it will not be difficult to catch up to Song Wuji, so you cannot rush now, take it slow." "Yes," Chu Li said. He had no chance of winning against Song Wuji now. The medicinal effects of the divine demon herb had not been completely used up, it was still increasing his cultivation level. Moreover, Song Wuji was in isolated cultivation, it was a rare opportunity. He had to work hard to improve himself. He had been cultivating the Flying Star Incantation's derivation technique to this point. The derivation of the Heart of Azura's divine sigil was getting faster and faster. He had a faint feeling that he had gained something. Chapter 2297. Wang Shoren smiled. Chu Li became the world's #1 master at a young age. Ever since he stepped into the Grandmaster realm, he had been advancing by leaps and bounds. In a short period of time, he went from a rank 3 master to supreme rank and became one of the few top masters in the Grandmaster realm. How could a genius like him not be arrogant at such a young age? His achievements would make him unknowingly proud, and he would view everyone else as ants. This was a purely natural feeling that was hard to suppress. Wang Shoren thought that Chu Li would not listen to his words. He even wanted to rebel and immediately went to look for Song Wuji. He did not expect Chu Li to listen to him. He could not help but praise this man's extraordinary temperament. No wonder he could achieve so much. He inexplicably admired him and smiled. Chu Li sighed. If that's the case, Azura and Heavenly Demon are afraid of Song Wuji. Of course, Wang Shoren said, but we're not completely useless. Although Heavenly Demon is strong, it's not aggressive enough. We still have to be careful of Azura. They can't wait to destroy us. Chu Li nodded. Azura and heavenly humans were like natural enemies. There was no justice or reason to them. It was not wrong to kill them on sight. If you did not kill them, they would kill you. Wang Shoren said. This time, you were able to save junior brother Jing and the others. Chu Li, what reward do you want? Chu Li said, I want to see more of the sutra library. Only this? Wang Shoren asked. Chu Li nodded. Does the Grandmaster Realm have any research on Azura? Wang Shoren pondered and slowly nodded. You're talking about the heart of Azura, right? The heart of Azura is the source. As long as we can solve the secret of the heart of Azura, we can destroy Azura. Chu Li said, the Grandmaster Realm should have this research, right? Indeed, but it's a waste of effort. Wang Shoren sighed. He stood up and walked to the window with his hands behind his back. He opened the window and said slowly, the source of Azura is not in this world. It's probably something from the upper realm, or even higher. We can't destroy them with the power of the first heaven, so it's useless even if we understand the secret of the heart of Azura. Chu Li said, if we can learn the secret behind it, it's not impossible to destroy it. I heard that Azuras who can cultivate the heavenly demonic power can destroy other Azuras. It's just a rumor. It hasn't been verified yet. Wang Shoren said slowly, moreover, if you want to destroy the Azuras, you'll need to cultivate the heavenly demonic power to the perfected realm, which is almost impossible. Chu Li was surprised. You want to perfect the heavenly demonic power? How many people have perfected the heavenly demonic power since ancient times? Wang Shoren turned around and looked at him with a faint smile. As for those who can cultivate the heavenly demonic power to perfection, they can ascend to the upper realm. I'm afraid they don't want to get involved in this matter. Chu Li furrowed his brows and pondered. If the Azuras were really connected to the upper realm, or even if their roots were in the upper realm, if they destroyed the Azuras, there would be big trouble in the upper realm. Instead of that, it was better to maintain the original situation, which was the wisest choice. Chu Li did not expect such a condition to exist. No wonder the Great Dream sect gave the opportunity of the divine demon herb to I Ching Song. It was to let him perfect the heavenly demonic power. If he really obtained the divine demon herb, he might really be able to perfect it. Chu Li sighed. If that's the case, it's not easy to destroy the Azuras. It's impossible to destroy them. Wang Shoren shook his head. Countless sages have the same thoughts as you, so they researched the Azuras in depth to find their weaknesses, but in the end it was all for naught. The Azuras are immortal. Chu Li asked, does our Taihao Peak have such research? Why waste your time? If you have the time, you might as well use it to cultivate. Wang Shoren said, if it's really useful, the Azuras would have been destroyed a long time ago. They wouldn't have survived until now. Chu Li said, I want to try, but I won't be too obsessed. If I really can't do it, I'll just give up. Sigh. All right, I'll fulfill your wish. Wang Shoren shook his head. This was a common problem of young geniuses. They were full of confidence and often thought that they could do what others could not, so they had to face the wall themselves. Chu Li gave a fist salute and smiled. Thank you, Peak Leader. I'll give you a month. Wang Shoren said, After a month, if there's no progress, give up. All right. Chu Li agreed without hesitation. Wang Shoren said, "Follow me." He stood up and walked out, bringing Chu Li out of the basilica and up the mountain until they arrived at a cliff. Then, he faced the biting cold wind and leaped into the dark valley below. Chu Li followed closely behind and leaped down. He suddenly turned in mid-air and stuck to the cliff. The two of them stuck to the cliff like geckos. Wang Shoren slapped the cliff a few times, and with a muffled boom, a hole appeared in the cliff. Seeing the hole appear, Wang Shoren did not move, and neither did Chu Li. A few cold lights shot out from the cave and disappeared into the air, as if they had merged with the void. Chu Li could not help but shiver. The few cold lights that were shot out made him feel an inexplicable chill. It was obvious that it was extremely dangerous. "Go in," Wang Shoren said. He glided into the cave, and Chu Li followed. The cave was wide enough for a few people to walk side by side. The air was fresh, and it was obvious that there were ventilation holes. They walked for more than 10 meters, turned a corner, and arrived at a stone room. The stone room could fit about 4 beds, and there were 4 bookshelves against the wall, filled with books. A faint scent of ink floated in the stone room. Chu Li glanced at it and saw the covers of some books. They were all personal notes. "These are the research on Azura by the previous generations of our Taihao Peak. You can take a look." Wang Shoren looked at the bookshelves with some emotion, and sighed. They put in so much effort, some even exhausted their entire lives, but in the end it was all for nothing. "I don't want you to follow in their footsteps." Chu Li fist saluted. "Thank you, Peak Leader. I'll be careful. Don't bring these out, and don't let anyone else know." Wang Shoren said, "Even if it doesn't help, it's still the blood and sweat of the previous generations. It can't be tarnished or neglected." "Yes," Chu Li said seriously. "I'll go back first. I'll get someone to send food over," Wang Shoren said. He glided out of the stone room, leaving only Chu Li behind. Chu Li took out a book and flipped through it. It wrote about the habits and weaknesses of Azura. He took out another book. It was about the patterns on the heart of Azura and the research on it. He could not help but feel refreshed. He quickly flipped through the book, thinking about it, and finally shook his head. He felt that the research on Azura's divine sigil was not correct, so he picked up another book and flipped through it. He read very quickly, and in one breath, he finished reading all the notes on the 4 bookshelves. He had a deeper understanding of Azura, and many of the research on the divine sigil had a hint of logic. However, these were contradictory and conflicting, and he needed to distinguish the truth from the lies. In his mind, the derivation of the divine sigil had improved a lot. With the help of these notes, it was as if he was discussing with hundreds or even thousands of previous generations. Their wisdom collided, and sparks flew everywhere. Many things that he could not understand were now clear. The Azura's divine sigil was becoming more and more mysterious, and the more he studied it, the more he could not see through it. It was as if it was beyond his imagination. Chapter 2298. Chu Li suddenly had a feeling that deducing the Azura divine sigil was like a primary school student taking university courses. It was extremely difficult, and the knowledge and wisdom required were incomplete. He vaguely concluded that Azura did not originate from this world. Ever since he came to the outer heavenly realm, he had read many books. He flipped through the books whenever he had the chance and read through the sutra library of several sections. He had a deep understanding of the knowledge and wisdom of this world. The wisdom of this world could not decipher the Azura divine sigil. Not to mention, even if it was deciphered, it might not be able to destroy Azura. While he was in despair, his fighting spirit was high. He had been studying in this stone room as if he was cultivating in isolation. In the blink of an eye, 10 days had passed. One morning, footsteps could be heard from outside. Even without the omniscient mirror, he knew it was Fu Kaiwei just from the footsteps. Fu Kaiwei wore a red dress that was as bright as a flower. Coupled with her beautiful face, Her radiance seemed to light up the stone room. She approached Chu Li with a faint fragrance. She stopped and stared at Chu Li without moving. Chu Li looked up at her and met her watery eyes. Fu Kaiwei said, "Are you thinking of dealing with Azura?" Chu Li put down a notebook and nodded. This notebook not only recorded the research and deduction of the Azura divine sigil, but also the strange stories of the Azura realm, the magical effects of the Azura statue, and the mysteries of the Azura goddess. If outsiders saw this, they might think it was just a myth or a legend. However, he had entered the Azura realm himself and experienced the power of the Azura statue and the goddess. He knew that the records were not fake. The other strange stories were probably true as well. The position of a Reverend Lord was not just a position or a representation of power, but also a cultivation level. A Reverend Lord had a Reverend Lord seal. Through this seal, he could obtain the cultivation level of all his subordinate. It was similar to the Blood Fiend and God's Blood Orb, which could directly increase the Reverend Lord's cultivation level. Therefore, the stronger the cultivation level of the Reverend Lord's subordinates, the stronger the Reverend Lord's cultivation level would be. If the Reverend Lord lost his subordinates, the Reverend Lord's cultivation level would be weakened as well. Furthermore, the Supremacy Seal was not a physical object. It was an intangible object that others could not see or take away. Once the Supremacy Seal died, the Supremacy Seal would leave and return to the statue. The Azura Temple was the source of power for the Azura realm, and the goddess had a transcendent status. It was said that her cultivation level was not high, but in reality, her cultivation level was unparalleled. It was just that the goddess never left the temple, so outsiders did not know about it. If Chu Li had not seen these secrets for himself, he would not have believed them as they were beyond his imagination. Fu Kaiwei pulled up her dress and sat elegantly at the stone table opposite him. She frowned and said, "Why do you have to go through so much trouble to deal with the Azuras? You can just kill them. You can even kill the Lord." Chu Li shook his head. Fu Kaiwei asked, "You want to destroy the Azura?" Chu Li said, "They're scourges. It's best to eliminate them." What he wanted to do now was to exterminate Azura directly so that the celestial beings would not cause trouble and disturb the peace of the lower realm. Who knew how many innocent people would die at the hands of Azura and enter the path of reincarnation? Fu Kaiwei said, "It's useless. The Azura are immortal and indestructible. If I have the time, I might as well kill them. Killing one will weaken their strength." She had a feeling that the Elder Society did not have the intention to exterminate Azura. The Azura treated the celestial beings as a whetstone, and the Elder Society was the same. Once Azura ceased to exist and their enemies disappeared, there would be internal strife. Chu Li shook his head and did not say anything. Fu Kaiwei said, "Did the peak leader tell you?" Chu Li nodded. He knew what she meant and sighed. "It seems that Song Wuji is really difficult to deal with. I'm going into isolated cultivation for half a year," Fu Kaiwei said slowly. "The next time I come out, I'll make a move no matter what." Chu Li said, "You're going into isolated cultivation for that long?" "I have a divine technique. If I can cultivate it, my cultivation level will double. If I still can't deal with Song Wuji, then there's nothing I can do." Fu Kaiwei frowned. "But you," she was worried that she would drag Chu Li down. Because Chu Li's current cultivation level was much higher than hers, she would become a burden. She could not tolerate that. Chu Li said slowly, "I will also work hard to cultivate. Once Azura becomes addicted to research, I'm afraid that it will affect your cultivation." Fu Kaiwei said, "Forget it." Chu Li said, "Just for a few days. If you don't have any clues, just give up." "Oh right, I heard that someone has perfected the Azura power technique?" Fu Kaiwei nodded. "There is such a rumor, but no one knows if it's true or false. No one knows who it is. It could be a rumor spread by Azura to tempt people to cultivate the Azura power technique." "What level have you cultivated the Azura power technique to?" Chu Li smiled. Fu Kaiwei scoffed. You must have cultivated the Azura power technique. Chu Li was helpless. Alright, level 8. Fu Kaiwei was shocked, her eyes widened. Chu Li smiled. The Azura power technique is not that difficult. Fu Kaiwei's beautiful face was full of surprise. She shook her head. The Azura power technique is like falling into hell. How did you endure it? Chu Li smiled. I just endure it. Pain has its benefits too. It can strengthen the body. That's true. Fu Kaiwei shook her head. She could not understand. Everyone knew about the Azura power technique. Cultivating it was like being cut by 1,000 knives. Moreover, the 6th level was the peak. It was impossible to break through any further unless there was a great opportunity. Out of 10 people who cultivated the Azura power technique, 9 of them were scared off by pain. The last one was scared off by despair. This was the first time she heard of someone cultivating the Azura power technique to level 8. She shook her head and took out a small box. She passed it to Chu Li. This is a strange thing I obtained from an Azura. Take a look. Chu Li took the box and used the omniscient mirror to examine it. However, he could not see what was inside the box. It seemed that there was something strange about the purple box. He slowly opened it. There was a small fingernail inside. This fingernail was only half of a fingernail. It was white with a hint of red. It glowed coldly. One look and one could tell that it was unusually sharp. Chu Li raised his eyebrows and looked at Fu Kaiwei. Is this an Azura's fingernail? Yes. Fu Kaiwei said, I've killed all the Azuras. They turn into nothingness after they die. Not a single hair is left. The flesh of an Azura was strange. Once it left the body, it would quickly turn into ashes and disappear without a trace. Even if an arm was cut off, it would quickly disappear without a trace. Fu Kaiwei scoffed. Only this great Azura left behind this fingernail. It's really strange. I've used a treasure sword to cut it, and there are many other ways. Even when a boulder ran over it, it couldn't hurt it. Chu Li stared at the fingernail thoughtfully. It was indeed strange. Fu Kaiwei said, Since you're studying Azuras, I'm sure this will be useful to you. Chu Li said, It's useful. Thank you. Fu Kaiwei glared at him. Chu Li chuckled. Alright, I won't stand on ceremony then. Fu Kaiwei said, I'm leaving. She waved her hand and turned to leave. She floated away like a ball of flame. Chu Li retracted his gaze and looked at the small fingernail. He focused the omniscient mirror, but it was shrouded by a layer of bloody light. He could not see through it. The layer of bloody light was as thick as solid blood. However, it emitted a light that was no different from the blood spirit. Chapter 2299. He thought about it, but he still couldn't figure out what it was. Thus, he circulated his energy and concentrated it on the fingernail. Instantly, a murderous aura shot up into the sky, and an extremely cold yin qi rushed into his body, as if it wanted to freeze him. Chu Li was shocked and looked at the fingernail carefully. He was not surprised by the aura, but the pattern on the fingernail. He stared at the fingernail with the omniscient mirror and saw the pattern that flashed and disappeared. This runic pattern was strange, causing a sense of familiarity to rise up in his heart. It was somewhat similar to the runic patterns on the Azura's heart, but they were of the same origin. With a single glance, Qin Wentian could tell that there was a connection between the two. It was just that the depth of the runic patterns was different. His spirit was lifted and his eyes were bright as he stared at the fingernail. The aura of extreme yin and extreme cold kept surging into his body, as if it was going to freeze him. He switched to the Azura power technique. As the god of Azura turned, the aura of extreme yin and extreme cold immediately integrated into the Azura power technique. It was abnormally pure and slowly increased the inner energy of the Azura power technique, becoming thicker and thicker. He was already full of energy and the Azura power technique had reached its peak. After the aura of extreme cold entered his body, he became even stronger. His body was slightly swollen, and he forced himself to hold on. The divine demon herb made his body stronger and stronger beyond imagination. The fingernail shone with a strange pattern and kept surging with the aura of extreme cold. As Chuli studied the pattern, he guessed that this fingernail was a treasure of Azura or even an inherited treasure, similar to the god's blood orb. His body swelled up more and more, and he felt like a balloon that was being filled with air. Moreover, the air was still filling up, and even though it was already full, it was still filling up, almost to the point of bursting, but it still did not stop. He vaguely felt that this was an opportunity, so he allowed the aura of extreme een and extreme cold to enter his body. He ignored the swelling and pain in his body. His meridians were already overloaded and his organs were aching. However, he had strong confidence in his body. This inner energy could not hurt him. Even if it could, he still had the life and death scripture and the earth matrix and reincarnation scripture to quickly recover. It was nothing to worry about and he just let it run wild. Time passed bit by bit. Boom! It was like thunder exploding in his ears, causing goosebumps to rise all over his body. He couldn't help but close his eyes. A ball of light split the darkness and flickered endlessly in front of him like a bright moon. He stared at it and saw that it was a pattern. The pattern was different from the pattern of the heart of Azura. After flashing a few times, his vision returned to darkness. He slowly opened his eyes and smiled. Azura Power Art 9th Layer. He had never imagined that this fingernail would be so powerful, allowing him to directly enter the 9th layer of the Azura Power Art. It was even more wondrous than the divine blood bead. After some thought, he took out the luminous pearl from his inner pocket and placed it on the table beside him. He used the omniscient mirror to observe his own body and smiled again. The blood fiend had indeed disappeared, dispelled by the Azura Power Technique. The 9th level of the Azura Power Technique could actually wash away the blood aura, allowing him to return to the state where he had never killed an Azura. There was not a single trace of blood aura around him. This was a big secret that no one mentioned. When the Azura Power Technique reached the 9th layer, his body became stronger and his cultivation level also increased, even more than before. These few days of isolated cultivation and the bitter ginseng had a great effect. He was able to directly enter the 9th layer because of the power of the fingernail and his understanding of the divine sigil. He had unknowingly broken through the barrier and used his inner energy to push forward and enter the 9th layer. The Azura Power Technique after the 7th layer did not have a heart technique record. It was contained in the Azura blood and hidden within the Azura Power Technique. Once the cultivation level and understanding reached a certain level, success would follow naturally and he would enter the next layer. Understanding and cultivation level were both indispensable. Pop! Like a pebble falling into a deep well, the fingernail suddenly exploded and turned into a cloud of blood mist. It disappeared without a trace, just like how an Azura died. Chuli frowned in thought. Chuli furrowed his brows in contemplation. The patterns on this fingernail were different from the Azura divine inscriptions, but there were some faint similarities between them. With this pattern as a reference, as well as the patterns that flashed before his eyes when he entered the 9th level, his understanding of the Azura divine inscriptions had improved by another level. This boosted his confidence. After entering the 9th layer, entering the 10th layer was not far away. The next morning, he left Crouching Dragon City and appeared in the foreign battleground. He flew all the way to the Azura boundary. He returned the light pearl to Sun Mingyue and bid farewell to Shao Qi, reminding them not to leave Taihao Peak. Along the way, he killed 2 Azuras and 1 great Azura. He realized that the blood mist could no longer touch him. After the red threads of the 3 Azuras entered his body, they were dissolved by the Azura Power Technique. Strangely, he realized that after the blood mist was dissolved, his cultivation level increased. This discovery made him overjoyed, so he killed another 4 Asuras and 2 great Asuras. He realized that the Asura power technique could directly transform his blood mist into cultivation level. He immediately remembered that Sui Miaozhu wanted to kill him in order to harvest his blood mist so that she could transform it into her cultivation level. On the other hand, Asuras could not form blood mist when they killed Asuras, but Devas could. This was determined by their physique. After he cultivated the Asura power technique to the 9th layer, his body still condensed blood mist, but he could dissolve it and transform it into cultivation level. After figuring this out, he almost laughed out loud. In his eyes, Asura had become spirit medicines and rare treasures that could increase his cultivation. As such, he began to sweep through the extraterrestrial battlefield and killed over 100 Asura in one go, including over 20 great Asura. Every time he killed an Asura, his cultivation base did not increase by much. However, when he accumulated it, his cultivation base still increased by 10%. His current cultivation level was too high, so it was extremely difficult for him to improve. It would take at least a year to increase by 1/10, but he accomplished it in a day. This was extremely tempting. Moreover, he did not treat Asuras as humans, so he only felt satisfied when he killed them. As his cultivation level increased, his body movement technique became faster, so he could kill Asuras more easily and efficiently. On the 2nd day, he killed more than 100 Asuras again, and his cultivation level increased again. He was not tired of it, as he wished he could continue killing like this forever. Without the blood mist and with the earth demonic stone to conceal his aura, the Asuras could not detect his approach. By the time they did, they were already dead. He was like a cat hiding in the dark waiting for an ambush. On the 4th day, he felt that the number of Asuras in the foreign battlefield decreased rapidly. He did not encounter more than a few in a day. He knew that his wishful thinking had failed. The Asura state must have found out about his existence, so he told the Asuras to avoid his evil clutches. He would not gain anything by staying in the foreign battlefield. Therefore, he continued to move forward. On the 5th day, he arrived at a forest dozens of miles away from the Divine King City. Using the omniscient mirror, he saw almost 100 Asuras lining up outside the Divine King City, walking in one by one. Chuli frowned and stopped in his tracks. He saw a familiar figure. It was a young lady in white, quiet and elegant. She stood at the city gate, calmly watching the Asuras walking in. Chuli immediately understood her intention. She must be guarding against him sneaking in. Chuli frowned. This was a little tricky. With her around, he really could not sneak in. With the omniscient mirror, he could see that the goddess was emitting a white light, and her eyes were also shooting out white light that fell on the Asuras. Chapter 2300. From this, he concluded that there must be an expert in divination within the realm of Asura who could predict danger and major event. He was afraid that his existence had already been predicted by them. Thus, they had sent the goddess to identify him and prevent him from sneaking into the realm of Asura. He pondered and thought of a solution. The walls of the city of divine kings were 100 meters tall, but it could not stop his light body technique. However, the city of divine kings was protected by a formation, and it was a powerful formation. However, he had the Deva shedding technique. After thinking about it, he glided to the other side of the city of divine kings. There was no one guarding the city. It was obvious that they were confident in their city protection formation. He could not help but smile and prepared to use the Deva shedding technique. However, as soon as he thought about it, he was immediately alerted and his hair stood on end. His expression changed and he stopped smiling. He put away the Deva shedding technique as soon as he used it. He looked at the city walls that were 100 meters tall and about 30 stories tall. He felt a chill. His divination skill made him understand that if he really used the Deva shedding technique, he would not be able to survive. He would definitely be devoured by the formation and his life would be in danger. If he died because of the formation, it would be too unjust. He was a formation master. Even if he could not understand the formation, he should not be killed by it. After a while, he looked at the city gate of the city of divine kings again. After a careful look, he realized that there was not only a goddess, but also 10 top-notch great Asuras. However, these 10 great Asuras were still slightly weaker than the 2 great reverends. He glided away and quickly found an Asura. This Asura was skinny and was an old man. He looked capable and strong as if he had endless energy. He was as fierce as a cheetah but Chuli easily caught him. The Asura saw that the situation was not good and wanted to self-destruct. Once the Asura power technique entered his body, he could not move at all. He could not even activate the Asura's self-destruction technique. He could only stare at Chuli with a murderous look. Chuli asked, "What order did you receive?" The Asura stared at him. Chuli saw in his mind that the Asura was fighting against a celestial in the foreign battlefield. Suddenly, the Divine Lady's voice rang in his mind. All Asuras returned to the city of divine kings immediately without delay. The Divine Lady's voice was gentle but clear. Everyone recognized her. When they heard this, all Asuras, including great Asuras, obeyed her order. Although the goddess was not the Asura deity king and could not command all of the Asuras, her position was transcendent. In the absence of the Asura deity king, no one would disobey the goddess order unless the Reverend gave the opposite order. Chuli understood and scoffed. Is the Supreme Lord or the Divine Lady more powerful? He could see the confusion in Asura's mind. It was obvious that she had never thought about this problem before, but she quickly reacted. In a situation where the goddess's orders were in conflict with the Lord's, she still had to listen to the Lord. However, the High Lords would usually not go against the goddesses. After all, the goddesses had a transcendent status. Chuli scoffed. Does the Divine Lady usually leave the Divine King's palace? He saw what the Asura was thinking. The Divine Lady usually did not leave the Divine King's palace unless something serious happened. If it was related to the safety of the Asura realm, everyone would protect the Divine Lady. Chuli was more certain that the Asura realm predicted his appearance. That was why the Divine Lady left the Divine King's palace and came to the city gate to guard against him. This judgment might not seem important, but it was very important, because once he made this judgment, he was sure that there was a trap waiting for him in the city. Once he stepped into the city of divine kings, he would be met with an all-out attack from the Asura realm. He was confident that his cultivation was top-notch, and at this level, he could fight Sui Miaozhu head-on and not be defeated, and even win. But what if Sui Miaozhu joined forces with Zhao Yuanyang, or even more top-notch experts? Without the Asuras, his cultivation level would slow down. It would be troublesome. He shook his head and gave up on the idea of barging in. He roared and laughed. Supreme Lord Sui, Supreme Lord Zhao, I'm here. Old friend, why don't you come out and meet me? His voice echoed throughout the city. The entire city of divine kings could hear him. The city of divine kings was shaken by his voice. A faint red light appeared in the sky. It was as if the sunset was shrouding the city. Chu Li. A clear but slightly hoarse female voice was heard. Everyone could tell that it was Sui Miaozhu's voice. Chu Li laughed. Supreme Lord Sui, how have you been? How dare you? Sui Miaozhu's graceful figure appeared on top of the city wall. She was dressed in a snow-white robe. She stood quietly on top of the city wall. Her cold gaze seemed to penetrate several miles and landed on Chu Li. She looked him in the eye and said coldly, Are you here to die? Chu Li laughed. You can't do anything to me. Then try. Sui Miaozhu scoffed. Come closer if you have the gut. Chu Li smiled. Come and find me if you have the guts. All right. Sui Miaozhu scoffed. Zhao Yuanyang appeared beside Sui Miaozhu and whispered, Be careful. He's trying to lure us away. He's alone, Sui Miaozhu said. I'll go and meet him. I'll do it, Zhao Yuanyang said. Chu Li had the earth demonic stone on him. He had suppressed his aura so no one could see through his cultivation level. They could not see the blood fiend either, so he must be carrying a secret treasure. However, it had only been a short time since the last time. No matter how powerful he was, he would not have improved much. Sui Miaozhu pondered for a while and shook her head. Since the Divine Lady said that he's a great threat, we can't underestimate him. Let's go together. Should we get someone to test the waters first? Zhao Yuanyang thought for a while. If we send 49 great Asuras to form the Asura formation, we should be able to take him down, right? We can try. Sui Miaozhu slowly said, Let's ask the Divine Lady. Zhao Yuanyang floated to the city gate and came to the side of the pure and elegant goddess. He asked in a low voice. The Divine Lady thought for a while and nodded. Suddenly, 49 great Asuras shot out of the city gate and pounced on Chu Li like 49 eagles. They shrouded the sky. Chu Li's figure flashed and appeared in front of a great Asura. The great Asura exerted all his strength to attack with his palm. The others hurriedly attacked with their own palms to force him to retreat. Chu Li's figure flashed at an incredible speed and turned into several shadows. His 5 fingers silently pierced into the great Asura's chest. He watched as the great Asura turned into a bloody mist, and then the heart of Asura appeared. Bang 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 bang. More than 10 Asura's divine palms hit Chu Li's back and shoulders. Although he used his body movement technique to move like a ghost, he could not block the attack of 49 palm energies. They were everywhere and there was no way for him to avoid them. It was already a testament to his body movement technique that he only took a few hits. He flew straight out and shot out several shooting star finger energies in the air. TSS 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 TSS. A bloody hole appeared in the chests of 4 great Asuras. Then, several finger energies landed on their bodies and killed them. In the blink of an eye, he had killed 5 great Asuras by the time he landed. The Asura formation could no longer be formed. Many Asuras outside the city gate roared in anger. Their murderous intent surged as they turned around and rushed over. The Divine Lady's voice suddenly rang in their minds. All Asuras, retreat back into the city. The 44 great Asuras who were surrounding Chu Li also turned around and rushed toward the city gate. Their will to fight had completely disappeared. Chapter 2301. Chu Li was stunned for a moment before he realized what was going on. His body shot out like lightning and got ahead of them. 9 treasured swords flew from afar and gathered above his head. They turned into a ball of silver light and began to harvest the great Asuras. Wherever the silver light passed, a bloody mist would spread and the heart of Asura would appear. The 2 great honorable lords at the top of the city wall looked gloomy. Sui Miaozhu turned and said, He's so arrogant. If we don't kill him today, the Asura's morale will drop and they won't dare to enter the foreign battlefield anymore. Their vitality will be greatly damaged, and they will be suppressed step by step. Asuras were immortal, but it did not mean that they were not afraid of death. They knew that they would not die, so they were not as afraid as normal people. However, dying once meant that they had to start all over again and cultivate again. This was a huge problem for many Asuras, so they would not die if they could. Unless they were at the end of the road, they would not hesitate to go all out. Knowing that they would definitely die if they went to the foreign battlefield, who would still go with such a malefic existence? Asuras were not fools. They were all smart like ghosts. Even a great honorable lord's order might not be effective. Without the tempering of the foreign battlefields, the progress of Asura's cultivation would be extremely slow, and their strength would also weaken. From then on, they would be left behind by celestial beings or even heavenly demons. That would be a disaster, and the Asura realm might face the danger of being suppressed, never to be able to raise their heads again. Thinking of this, they would not allow Chu Li to live. They would not allow such a huge threat like him to exist. The murderous intent in their hearts boiled like lava, and they wanted to rush over and kill him immediately. However, they also understood that they could not kill him now. He could multitask and use the 9 swords to fight Sui Miaozhu and his martial arts against Zhao Yuanyang. The two of them wanted to kill him but were powerless. The two of them looked at the goddess. The goddess, who was dressed in a snow-white robe, stood quietly at the entrance of the city. She seemed to have turned a blind eye to the tragic scene of 49 great Asuras being slaughtered. She did not seem to be affected at all as she looked at Chu Li calmly. Her eyes were calm and gentle, as if Chu Li was not an enemy but a friend. She even had a faint smile on her face. When Chu Li combined the 9 swords into one, he waved his bloody god's claw at the same time. With each claw, the great Asuras were defenseless against his claws, but they still managed to divert some of their attention to the goddess and the 2 honorable lords. Chu Li's heart skipped a beat when he saw the divine lady's reaction. Could it be that she had seen through him, found his weakness, and thought of a way to restrain him? He had never believed that he was invincible. Even if he was invincible in this world, it was not a big deal. There was always someone better out there. The Asura realm gave him a sense of danger. If he rushed in, his life would be in danger, so he was on guard against the goddess and the Asura realm. Chu Li, stop. Sui Miaozhu said coldly. If you continue to act like this, we'll go to Wulong City to block the way. We'll be just as murderous as you. Chu Li smiled. We'll have to see how capable you are, revered Lord Sui. If not for Song Wuji being there, you all would have to die. Zhao Yuanyang said solemnly. Chu Li glanced at Zhao Yuanyang and shook his head. That's the ability of us grandmasters. If you don't dare to come, then so be it. There's no need to explain further. As he spoke, he did not stop moving. Silver light flashed, and the jade blood divine claw was as fast as lightning. There were only 10 great Asuras left, but they could not break through his blockade. No matter which direction they went, they would be caught and killed. They simply rushed straight for the city gate, thinking that the goddess would save them. The goddess sighed. Her lips parted slightly, and she murmured a few words. Chu Li felt a chill down his spine. He could feel danger approaching, so he quickly retreated. Bam 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 bam! A series of muffled sounds were heard. The red mist spread and enveloped him. He tried his best to retreat. His body was as fast as lightning, but he still could not get out of the range of the red mist in time. The 10 great Asuras self-destructed at the same time. Their positions were quite meticulous, forming a formation. When they exploded, they could condense all the energy into the strongest attack and hit Chu Li. Chu Li only felt a strong force drilling into his body, tearing it apart. His meridians were instantly damaged, and the flow of his inner energy became stagnant. He stopped where he was and looked at Sui Miaozhu and Zhao Yuanyang, who flew over like 2 giant eagles. He shook his head and smiled. What a good plan! Using great Asuras to self-destruct to kill me. Your cold-heartedness has really opened my eyes. Instead of dying in your hands, I'd rather kill myself to kill you, Sui Miaozhu said. Their voices resounded throughout the entire city of divine kings. Chu Li was originally stalling for time. The Asura power technique was quickly melting this strong force and healing his body. It would not take long for him to recover. The goddess said, he's injured. Let's do it. Sui Miaozhu and Zhao Yuanyang nodded. The golden sword in Sui Miaozhu's sleeve pierced out and turned into a golden light. It was blocked by the silver light of the 9 swords. Zhao Yuanyang used Asura's palm to attack Chu Li, but it was blocked by Chu Li's blood god's claw. The goddess frowned at Chu Li. Sui Miaozhu and Zhao Yuanyang looked helpless. They had already activated their secret skills, but they still could not break through Chu Li's defense. Chu Li seemed to be constantly improving. His martial arts had become stronger. Chu Li realized that the 10 great Asuras who self-destructed also released red threads to him. They condensed into blood energy that was absorbed by him and turned into cultivation level. His cultivation level had indeed improved. These 49 great Asuras had helped him more than hundreds of Asuras. His cultivation level had increased by 20 to 30%. This made him even more excited. If he could kill a Reverend Lord, his cultivation level would definitely improve. This made him very motivated. He suddenly gave up on Sui Miaozhu and swung his hands to attack Zhao Yuanyang at the same time. Zhao Yuanyang did not expect him to be so bold. His eyes glowed red and a red light suddenly shot out from his mouth. This red light was sudden and strangely fast. It was close to Chu Li and did not give him time to react. Bang! Chu Li only had time to block it with his claws. He felt a pain in his right hand. It had been pierced and the red light continued to shoot at him. With this buffer, Chu Li had time to dodge. The omniscient mirror had already seen that it was a blood-red energy barrier. This was obviously a secret skill. It was unexpected and powerful. If his emerald blood divine claw was not strong enough, his palm would not have been able to block this red light and it would have pierced through his head. Zhao Yuanyang's buffer allowed Sui Miaozhu to rush up to him. The two of them rushed at Chu Li again. Chu Li shook his head and turned to leave. His body movement technique was so fast that he disappeared from their sight in the blink of an eye. He had fully recovered but could not do anything. He could not rush into the city of God King again. The city of God King was full of danger and he had not lived long enough. Sui Miaozhu and Zhao Yuanyang came to the goddess with a gloomy expression. The goddess bowed. "Thank you for your hard work, Reverend Lords." Sui Miaozhu frowned. Zhao Yuanyang said, "This Chu Li was not this powerful before. Now that his cultivation level has improved, he has become a big threat. We can only blame ourselves for not being able to kill him last time." He was annoyed when he thought about it. Chu Li was not this powerful the last time. If they had killed him back then, they would not have been in such a difficult situation. "He will always have a weakness," the goddess said softly. Sui Miaozhu said slowly, "His weakness is with his women. Unfortunately, the two women would not appear in the foreign battlefield anymore." The goddess said, "We need to borrow the power of the heavenly demon." Chapter 2302. Sui Miaozhu sighed. The heavenly demon might not be involved. "That will require Sir Sui's help," the goddess smiled. Sui Miaozhu shook her head. "The heavenly demon is smarter than us. How can they be used as our swords? They are more informed than us." "That's true," Zhao Yuanyang scoffed. "Goddess, looks like we have to take the initiative." The goddess frowned and sighed. "This Chu Li is really hard to deal with." Sui Miaozhu said, "Let me do it." The goddess looked at her. Sui Miaozhu said indifferently, "I'll go look for him alone, and then we'll perish together." "Sir Sui, that's not appropriate." Zhao Yuanyang shook his head. "He must have his guard up. This Chu Li is too cunning, he won't fall for this. If he sees that you have the intention to kill yourself, he will avoid it." He had seen how sharp Chu Li was. If not for that, the explosion of 10 great Asuras would be enough to kill him. The power of 10 great Asuras exploding according to the formation was too shocking and unbearable. It was a shame that Chu Li was too sharp and escaped the moment he saw something was wrong. The explosion of 10 great Asuras was not even a tenth of its power was used. If not, Chu Li would be dead by now and they would be able to harvest his malevolent blood to increase their cultivation. Chu Li's malevolent blood was too thick. No matter who harvested it, they would improve by leaps and bounds and become an Asura deity king. The other would never be able to catch up. "I have a way to prevent him from escaping," Sui Miaozhu said. Zhao Yuanyang shook his head. "Sir Sui, it's not that I'm looking down on you, but Chu Li is too cunning. He won't fall for it. If you don't kill Chu Li in the end, you will be reincarnated. That would be such an injustice." Sui Miaozhu said. He has already become a force to be reckoned with. If we don't get rid of him now, I'm afraid that our Azure realm will be facing another Song Wuji. This will be a great blow to our Azure realm. Let him enter the city, the goddess said softly. The two were stunned. Sui Miaozhu shook her head. He won't enter the city. He will. The goddess said, just say that it's related to the 10th level of Azura power technique. He will enter. Sui Miaozhu frowned and her expression darkened. He wants to become the Azura deity king? Immortality and command the entire Azura realm. How tempting is that? The goddess calmly said, no matter how strong his will is, no matter how indifferent his temperament is, he still won't be able to refuse. His current cultivation has reached the 9th level, but he is still far away from the 10th level. As long as there is a glimmer of hope, he will grab it tightly. He can only find this glimmer of hope from the Azura statue. He is a smart person, he will enter the city. But his senses are very sharp. He must have discovered the danger in the city, Zhao Yuanyang said. How could he be fooled? No matter how smart you are, you can't resist desire. The goddess faintly smiled. For him to be able to achieve such a cultivation at such a young age, he must be full of confidence. He feels that there is no place in this world that he can't go. Even if there is danger, he will still be able to find a way out. Thus, even if he feels that there is danger, he will still be unable to suppress his curiosity and come in to take a look. That makes sense, Sui Miaozhu said. He will definitely come, as long as we provoke him. Zhao Yuanyang hurriedly asked, how do we do that? Sui Miaozhu said, let's say that we are about to have an Azura deity king. He will definitely rush over to confirm it. He might even take the risk to get rid of us. Yes, that is true. Zhao Yuanyang nodded. Based on his understanding of Chu Li, he would definitely not tolerate the birth of an Azura deity king. Very well, the goddess softly said. She then muttered a few words and muttered to herself. These words had already appeared in the minds of the Azuras outside the city of Divine King. All of them knew that an Azura deity king was about to be born, so they rushed back to the city of Divine King to witness it. Chu Li was killing Azuras outside the city. With every Azura he killed, his cultivation level would increase slightly, so he must not miss such a good opportunity. The stronger his cultivation level was, the better he would be able to deal with the assassinations of the goddess and the two Supreme Lord. They would definitely think of a way to kill him. He quickly saw the words passed down by the goddess in the minds of the Azuras and frowned. He was certain that this was a trap to force him to show himself. How could an Azura deity king be born so easily? 2 out of the 4 Supreme Lords were dead, and the other 2 Supreme Lords still could not complete that crucial step. As his cultivation of the Azura power technique deepened, he felt that the 10th level of the Azura power technique was far away, almost impossible to break through. This was not only because of his cultivation level, but also because of the obstruction of the Azura Divine Sigil. His understanding of the Azura Divine Sigil was not enough. Even though he had seen all the research on the Azura Divine Sigil in Taihao Peak, he still could not derive the secrets of the Azura Divine Sigil. He only had a superficial understanding of the Azura Divine Sigil, and this bit of superficial knowledge could only push him to the 9th level, not the 10th level. Therefore, to achieve the 10th level, he needed to go to the statue of the Azura deity king and understand the divine sigil through the statue. He was certain that this was the only way. This was the conclusion of the derivation technique. However, the goddess and the 2 Supreme Lords were eyeing him and wanted to kill him. Moreover, there was danger in the city. If he went in, he might be trapped here forever, unable to escape. Even the life and death scripture and earth matrix and reincarnation scripture might not work. He thought about it and decided to take the risk. If he wanted to achieve the 10th level of the Azura power technique, he had to give it a try. He first built 9 reincarnation pagodas around the city of Divine Kings. The stone pagodas were located in the forest halfway up the mountain. They were inconspicuous because the forest was made up of ancient trees that reached into the clouds. His stone pagodas were only about 10 meters tall and were completely hidden by the forest. There was also a formation around the stone pagodas. If someone approached, they would unconsciously move away and not pay attention to the stone pagodas. With the help of the divine sword, he cut the stone like tofu. He built the pagodas at lightning speed. After building 9 stone pagodas in one go, he was filled with confidence. Even if he died in the city, or his body was destroyed, with the help of the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture, his soul would not dissipate. As long as his soul did not dissipate, he could study the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture in his soul state. He might be able to cultivate it to perfection and reconstruct his body. With this backup plan and confidence, he decided to enter the city of Divine Kings and see the statue of the deity king. Otherwise, he would not be satisfied. As the night fell, the number of Azuras outside the city of Divine Kings decreased. "Divine Lady, go back and rest," Zhao Yuanyang said. "Chu won't dare to enter the city for the time being. He will hesitate for a long time before making up his mind." "Divine Lady, you don't have to worry too much," Sui Miaozhu said. "Moreover, we can't wait for him to enter the city. With you guarding here, he won't dare to enter." "All right." The Divine Lady nodded and closed fist saluted before retreating into the city. Sui Miaozhu said, "Lord Zhao, I'll keep watch for the first half of the night. You can keep watch for the second half." "All right." Zhao Yuanyang nodded and closed fist saluted before leaving. Outside the city of Divine Kings, other than a few great Azuras, Sui Miaozhu was the only one who quietly watched the Azuras enter the city. The Azuras were all respectful and did not dare to act presumptuously in front of her. Chu had transformed into an Azura. The Earth Demonic Stone and the 9 swords were already in the stone pagodas. Nothing was left on him. The Azura power technique was activated to the 4th level, so he did not attract any attention. Sui Miaozhu let him pass without hesitation. She did not notice anything strange about Chu. Chapter 2303. Chu entered the city silently. Suddenly, the energy that shrouded the city outside disappeared. His omniscient mirror was no longer obstructed, and he could see everything in the city in an instant. There was nowhere to hide except for a few mansions that were blocked by an invisible force. This included the ruler of God's palace, 2 honorable lord residences, and the Azura deity king's residence. His gaze fell upon the ruler of God's palace. The ruler of God's palace was shrouded in a white light like a pearl that emitted a soft light. This soft light blocked the omniscient mirror, but Chu knew that the ruler of God's palace was not to be underestimated. The Divine Lady should be in the ruler of God's palace. The best way to attack the Azura realm was to destroy the ruler of God's palace, or even kill the Divine Lady. Chu had a strong desire to kill the Divine Lady and had plotted against him several times. However, the Divine Lady had always stayed in the ruler of God's palace. There was a terrifying force there. Once he got close, he was not confident that he could escape unscathed even though his cultivation level had improved greatly. There was also the other honorable lord. If he could kill both honorable lords, even if a new honorable lord could be chosen, his strength would be greatly reduced. He could even kill this group of honorable lords again. His blood was boiling at the thought. In the city of God's palace, the void was no longer locked. He appeared outside the southern honorable lord's residence in a flash and hid in an uninhabited residence. Azuras usually had to eat, drink, and poop like celestials. However, their temperaments were different. Male Azuras were boring and only knew how to cultivate. They were similar to workaholics in his past life. Female Asuras were usually lively and unrestrained. Their lifestyles were completely different from male Asuras, as they were more focused on enjoying life. He stayed in this uninhabited residence, and was not in a hurry to act. He observed the Asura realm first. He came and went in a hurry last time, and did not have a good understanding of it. This time, he had to understand it well, and was prepared to let the divine lady's guard down. For the next 2 days, he stayed in this residence. Apart from eating, he did not go out at all. He observed the Asuras entering and exiting the Honorable Lord's residence to understand their thoughts and identity. 2 days later, the gates of the City of God's palace closed and no Asuras returned. Chuli had already figured out the depth and situation of the Honorable Lord's residence. Although he still could not see inside, he knew that there was no ambush because the goddess and Sui Miaozhu were at their respective positions and had not come over. Even if there was an ambush in the Southern High Lord's mansion, there was nothing to worry about without the help of these 2 top-notch experts. He was no longer in a hurry to assassinate Zhao Yuanyang. Instead, he set his sights on the goddess. Even if Zhao Yuanyang died, as long as the goddess was around, the city of divine kings would not fall into chaos. She would still have the ability to threaten him. This was because he discovered that the source of power for the city-protecting Grand Array was the God King Palace, and the God King Palace was controlled by the goddess. Therefore, he had to find a way to kill the goddess first. Otherwise, even if he killed Zhao Yuanyang, he might not be able to escape from the city of God Kings. Once the God King Palace activated its power, he would not be able to withstand it. In the evening, the goddess quietly walked out of the God King Palace in a snow-white robe. Behind her were 10 great Asuras who formed a semicircle around her. It was a heavily guarded place. These 10 great Asuras' cultivation levels were top-notch. Although they were not comparable to Sui Miaozhu and Zhao Yuanyang, they were not far off. Moreover, these 10 great Asuras walked according to the formation. They had already formed a cohesive formation that was much more powerful. Chuli squinted his eyes slightly. He did not let his omniscient mirror linger on the goddess. He knew that the goddess had some mystical abilities. Her soul energy was strong, so her sensitivity was not inferior to his. It was very likely that she would sense the omniscient mirror's prying. Once she sensed it, she would be able to determine that he had entered the city of divine kings. "Goddess, are we going to Fufeng Brothel?" a great Asura asked. The goddess nodded lightly. The great Asura said, "This is a critical moment. It's best that we don't go." "It's okay," the goddess said softly. The great Asura looked at her and nodded helplessly. Their bodies were tense, ready to defend against an assassination. Chuli secretly let out a sigh of relief. Their vigilance meant that there was no trap. Otherwise, he would not have dared to act rashly. The opportunity to assassinate the goddess was extremely rare. He had been hiding in the God King Palace. Her sudden appearance made Chuli suspect that she was a bait. Fortunately, he did not see any ambushes around him. Moreover, looking at the expressions of these 10 great Asuras, it did not seem like there was an ambush. Chuli was still not in a hurry to act. His mind was calculating. Unfortunately, ever since he entered the city of divine kings, the sense of danger had been lingering in his heart. It urged him to leave quickly. The warning signs kept ringing. It had become a great torture. He simply tossed this intuition aside and ignored the warning signs. However, at this time, he picked it up again. He wanted to predict his own fate. After channeling the 12 stars heaven setting technique for a while, he frowned. It was hard to predict his fate. The goddess's power was strange. It could isolate any prediction. Just like himself, it was impossible to predict her fate. Chuli frowned and became more cautious. He already knew the goddess's name. It was Li Yuehua. It was a very ordinary name, but it was deeply respected by the Asuras. The goddess was different from the Asura deity king. The statue of the Asura deity king had chosen her. She was unique. Moreover, the goddess had many incredible divine powers. Chu Li knew from the Asura's mind that the goddess could see through the minds of all Asuras. In front of the goddess, nothing could hide. Chu Li did not find it strange. With such soul power, it was not difficult to see through people's minds. As long as one found a heart technique similar to his eye of insight, it would be easy to cultivate. It was impossible for the Asura realm to not have such a technique. However, Li Yuehua's divine power was ineffective against him. That was why he managed to deceive his way through and obtained the Asura deity king's inheritance. He broke through to the 7th, 8th, and 9th level. This might have caused Li Yuehua to hate him and kill him. Chu Li guessed that Li Yuehua must be full of murderous intent toward him. She must have schemed to lure him into a trap to make up for her mistake. After losing so many Asuras, Li Yuehua's guilt would suffocate her, and she would want to kill him the next moment. This was definitely a trap. In the end, Chu Li gave up on the assassination. He concluded that this was a trap that only Li Yuehua knew about. In the end, he watched as Li Yuehua had a meal in a restaurant. Then, she slowly returned to the ruler of God's palace. After 2 days, she left the ruler of God's palace and went to the Rising Wind brothel. After eating, she returned to the ruler of God's palace. Chu Li was very patient. He still did not make a move. He had already changed residences and secretly spied on the 2 honorable lord residences and the ruler of God's palace. Based on his intuition, he searched for the source of danger. After 10 days of peace in the city, the Asuras gradually could not hold it in anymore. Some great Asuras entered the ruler of God's palace and begged the goddess to open the city gates to re-enter the extraterrestrial battlefield. They had been hiding in the city for a long time. As Asuras, how could they be afraid of death? If they died, then so be it. One by one, the great Asuras entered the ruler of God's palace and came out dejectedly. It was obvious that the goddess Li Yuehua did not agree. Even though there were many of them, they could not change the goddess' orders. They had no choice but to obey. Chapter 2304. Stepping onto the spacious square that was paved with white jade, Chu Li activated the Asura power technique and felt the power coming from the ground. It was indeed the power of the statue of Deity King, but this time, there was no hostility. Chu Li was overjoyed. It seemed like the blood-fiendish aura was the basis for this mighty force to determine who was friend or foe. As long as he did not have the blood-fiendish aura, he would not be attacked by the statue of the ruler of God's power. He did not have to worry about being injured. However, he immediately shook his head. The power of the deity king statue would not actively attack him, but the goddess could use this power to attack him. It would not be easy to hide from goddess Li Yuehua. It would be best if he could lure Li Yuehua out of the God King palace and kill her outside. However, he was certain that every time Li Yuehua left the Divine King palace, she would use herself as bait to catch a big fish like him. If he really made a move, he would definitely fall into her hands, and it would not end well for him. There was a power in the city of divine kings that frightened him, and there was more than one. In the past few days, he had already found out that one of them was the defensive array, the other 2 were the 2 reverend manors, and the last one was in the divine king palace, in the hands of the goddess. He followed a few great Asuras across the square and came to the front of the main hall. When he raised his head, he could see 2 statues of god kings, one male and one female. They looked as if they were alive and looked at them quietly. Their eerie aura permeated the air, suppressing them so much that they could not lift their heads. Chu Li also pretended to be intimidated by the aura. He did not dare to raise his head, and only used the omniscient mirror to observe. Li Yuehua stood in the hall and looked at the great Asuras quietly. She said calmly, "I know why you are here, but there is no need to discuss the matter of leaving the city. If we can leave the city, I will open the city gate." A great Asura beside Chu Li hurriedly said, "Goddess, why can't we leave the city? We're all very curious and want to know the reason. Li Yuehua frowned and glanced at him. It's not suitable to go out. Goddess. The great Azura asked in confusion, why is it not suitable to travel? I don't know, Li Yuehua said. Chu Li looked at the great Azura to see if he had anything else to say. Unexpectedly, the great Azura opened his mouth but could not make a sound. In the end, he gave a fist salute, took 2 steps back, and turned to leave. The great Azuras also turned to leave. However, Chu Li did not move. He gave a fist salute and said, Divine Lady, we've heard a rumor. What rumor? Li Yuehua's white robe fluttered as she stepped out of the basilica. She arrived at the top of the stairs and stood in front of Chu Li. A faint fragrance wafted over, refreshing the mind. Chu Li looked at her and said slowly, I heard that Chu Li from the Grandmaster realm was too powerful. The goddess was afraid that we would suffer too many losses and die at his hands, so she closed the city of God King. I wonder if this rumor is true? The great Azuras who were walking out stopped in their track. Although they did not turn around, they had already pricked up their ears. Not bad. Li Yuehua nodded without hesitation. Indeed, it's because Chu Li is too powerful. Other than the Honorable Lord, no one else is a match for him. Anyone who encounters him will definitely die. Goddess, when have we, the Azuras, been afraid of death? Chu Li muttered, but once he's dead, no matter how powerful he is, how many Azuras can he kill? Let's prepare more people to perish together with him, and get rid of this scourge. His senses are sharp. You can't stop him. Li Yuehua said. If it were that easy, he would have been killed a long time ago. Everyone, don't worry. As long as the ruler of gods appears, Chu Li will definitely die. When will the ruler of gods appear? Chu Li asked. Within 7 days. Li Yuehua said slowly. Chu Li was surprised. Li Yuehua waved her hand. Go. Chu Li did not move, but the other great Azuras had already left the square and the ruler of God's palace. Only Chu Li and the goddess were left in front of the palace. There were 10 great Azuras in the distance. They would occasionally glance at them lazily, but their attention was not on them. The goddess was the most powerful in the ruler of God's palace, so it was not their turn to protect her. Li Yuehua looked at Chu Li calmly and smiled. Do you have anything else to say? Chu Li said, I'd like to exchange a few moves with the goddess. Oh? Li Yuehua smiled faintly. Why do you want to exchange martial arts with me? I've already cultivated to the peak, but I can't find a way to break through. I hope that the goddess can guide me. Chu Li said. All right, let's give it a try then, Li Yuehua said. As the goddess, she did not care about worldly affairs, but she was in charge of inheritance and martial arts. If an Azura came to exchange martial arts, she would not reject them and would even enthusiastically guide them. Therefore, Chu Li did not act recklessly. Li Yuehua glided down the stairs and arrived at the square. She stepped on the white jade stone and extended her hand. Come. Chu Li fist saluted. Pardon me. As soon as he said that, he struck out with his palm. It was the Azura's palm. His Azura's palm was not proficient enough and was far inferior to the Azura power technique. However, with the support of the 8th level of the Azura power technique, its power was still extraordinary. His palm energy silently approached her. Li Yuehua was surprised. She did not expect Chu Li to have such pure energy, so she braced herself to face the attack. The two of them exchanged palms and in the blink of an eye, they had exchanged more than 20 moves. Chu Li attacked with every move and acted as if he was giving it his all. Li Yuehua was calm. When Chu Li suddenly turned his palm into a claw and used the divine blood claw, her palm suddenly lit up. Then, several forces shot out from her body and instantly hit Chu Li. When Chu Li saw this ball of light, he knew that he had been tricked. He immediately turned around and rushed out. He felt several forces drilling into his body. It was as if they were real forces that were wreaking havoc in his body. They damaged his internal organs, and even his inner energy was a little chaotic. The Azura power technique seemed to have lost its effectiveness and was crippled. Liyue scoffed. Where do you think you're going? Her body movement technique was faster, and she blocked in front of Chuli. Chuli had transformed the Azura power technique into the Cloud slashing power. He wanted to devour these four forces. His Cloud slashing power technique's boundary was getting higher and his devouring power was getting stronger. However, these four forces were pure and strange. He could not devour them for a while, and they were still wantonly destroying his body. His body was strong and the four forces could not hurt him. However, his inner energy was not flowing smoothly and he could not use his light body technique to its fullest. Liyue blocked it. Chuli scoffed. What is the Divine Lady trying to do? Chuli, you can't escape. I've been waiting for you for a long time. Liyue shook her head. Chuli asked, what antique study was that just now? It's just a few treasures, Liyue said. It's just a side path. It's enough for emergencies. You'll stay here today. As soon as she finished speaking, a soft white light shot out from her body. Soon, the entire square was shrouded in white light. The surging energy turned the square into a sea of energy that was about to devour him. Chuli once again experienced the feeling he had back then. Even though the Azura power technique had reached the 9th level, the source of energy was still sealed here. He could not borrow energy from the outside world and could only rely on his own strength. Liyue suddenly sat down. She put her palms together and closed her eyes. She looked solemn and holy. The light around her became brighter and brighter. The light from the white jade stone also became brighter. The surging energy became violent and terrifying as if it wanted to tear Chuli apart. Chuli struggled to hold on. He lifted his feet and walked out. He wanted to break through the sea of energy. He understood that even if he used the sacrificial power, it would be difficult to fight against this mighty energy. Liyue was even more terrifying than before. The light around her became brighter as if she was burning herself in exchange for more energy. He was sure that Liyue was using the art of self-sacrifice to drag him down with her, destroying everything indiscriminately. Chapter 2305. However, even though he knew this, there was nothing he could do. It was as if he had sunk into a swamp, and the more he tried, the deeper he sank. The enormous power contained within the Divine King's statue seemed endless, and his strength was like a drop of water in the ocean before this power. As the light on Liyue's body grew brighter, the power became more violent as if it was going to tear him apart. Chuli's body was strong. Despite the power, he was not injured too badly. However, he pretended to be injured and spat out a mouthful of blood. He looked dispirited and swayed. He slowly sat on the ground and looked at the 10 approaching great Azuras. He seemed powerless. The 10 great Azuras stepped forward without hesitation and slammed their palms down. TSS, 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 TSS. Chuli activated the Azura power technique, but used the meteor finger force. It pierced through the 10 palms. The 10 great Azuras took a few steps back from the finger force, but immediately rushed forward again. Chuli continued to attack. The finger force was dense and formed a large net that enveloped them. Then, bloody holes appeared on their bodies. Some were on their shoulders, some on their chests, and some on their legs. The finger force was strange. It was solid, but it was like a hammer. When it landed on their bodies, it felt like they were hit by a hammer. They could not help but fly away. At the same time, the finger force did not dissipate and wreaked havoc in their bodies, disrupting the flow of their Azura power technique. Chuli's Azura power technique was at a very high level and his inner energy was even purer. They could not expel or refine it. It was like maggots attached to their bones, entangling them all the time. They could not free themselves to fight Chuli. The light on Liyue's body grew brighter. Chu Li felt that the power was getting stronger and wanted to tear him apart. However, Chu Li was still able to beat the 10 great Asuras until they could not lift their heads. Chu Li, don't be so arrogant. Zhao Yuanyang flew over with a long roar. Chu Li frowned. He did not expect Zhao Yuanyang to come. He scanned the surroundings with the omniscient mirror and sighed in relief when he did not see Sui Miaozhu. If Sui Miaozhu came again, he would be dead. He let out a long laugh and said, "All right, if Lord Sui comes again, that would be great. You can experience the power of the Azura realm. Don't worry. Lord Sui is an isolated cultivation. The Divine Lady and I are enough to take care of you," Chu Li said. "Then we'll have to see how capable you are, revered Lord Zhao." Zhao Yuanyang had already pounced on Chu Li, his palms slamming down at lightning speed. He did not dodge Chu Li's meteor point energy, but his body was already enveloped in a layer of red light. Chi, chi, chi. The 3-finger forces broke through the red light around him and landed on his body. 3 small holes appeared on his chest. If it wasn't for the heart protection mirror, there would have been 3 bloody holes on his chest. Zhao Yuanyang did not care and continued to move forward. Chi 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 chi. 4-finger forces struck him again. A white light flashed and blocked Chu Li's finger energy. Chu Li could see that the white light came from the ground. It was the power of the Azura deity king statue, the power that the goddess had mobilized. Bam! Zhao Yuanyang came closer and met Chu Li's palm with his. Chu Li turned his palm into a claw and pierced through Zhao Yuanyang's right palm like it was tofu. Then, with a gentle shake, his entire right arm exploded into a mist of blood and disappeared. Zhao Yuanyang flew 100 feet away and landed on the edge of the white jade ground. He almost flew out. He staggered 2 steps and rushed toward Chu Li again. He did not care about his missing right arm and swatted at Chu Li with his left hand. Chu Li frowned as he watched the white light surge and rushed toward Zhao Yuanyang's right arm to stop the bleeding. Then, the white light flashed and Chu Li could no longer see it clearly. However, Chu Li felt a powerful force gathering. He seemed to take a step back with some difficulty. Zhao Yuanyang chased after him relentlessly. His body movement technique was as fast as lightning, and he did not seem to be injured at all. Chu Li could always avoid him, but Zhao Yuanyang's body movement technique was getting faster and faster. Like lightning, he became a shadow that could not be seen. After a while, Chu Li began to feel strained. The power accumulated in Zhao Yuanyang's body was too strong. It was like a rolling snowball, making people less and less willing to face it head-on. Chu Li's meteor point energy could no longer break through his defense, so he could only use his footwork to shift and dodge. However, if this continued, he would definitely be hit by Zhao Yuanyang. It was better than late. He made up his mind and activated the sacrificial divine power. His palm energy that was 10 times more powerful instantly surged out. Bang! With a muffled sound, Chu Li felt that his power had become extremely weak and he was sent flying. He fell heavily at the bottom of the steps of the ruler of God's palace, right in front of the goddess Li Yuehua. Li Yuehua's body flashed with white light, which had already covered her body. Chu Li could only see the white light, but he could not see her. Chu Li took advantage of the situation and leaped toward Li Yuehua. If he wanted to defeat the 2 of them here, he must first injure Li Yuehua. Otherwise, no matter how strong his inner energy and exquisite his martial arts were, it would be useless. Zhao Yuanyang's powerful power came from the ruler of God's statue, which was Li Yuehua's doing. Li Yuehua could control the power of the ruler of God's statue, but Zhao Yuanyang could not. If Chu Li killed Li Yuehua, Zhao Yuanyang alone would not be a problem. Bang! He slapped the white ball of light with his palm, and then he flew backward and landed heavily on the stairs. He turned around and went into the ruler of God's palace. However, Zhao Yuanyang blocked in front of him like a ghost. Zhao Yuanyang reached out with his right hand, and the wind from his palm was so sharp that Chu Li did not dare to face it head-on. He could only dodge it sideways, which also lost the opportunity to go into the ruler of God's palace. He frowned as he looked at Zhao Yuanyang's right arm, which had recovered to its original state. To him, regrowing a severed arm was not difficult, as the life and death scripture could do it. However, regrowing a missing arm in such a short time was something that his life and death scripture could not do. The life and death scripture would need at least 7 days to regrow a severed arm, but it only took Zhao Yuanyang a moment. This was due to Zhao Yuanyang's unique secret skill, the power of the ruler of God's statue, and the uniqueness of the Asura's physique. To be able to regrow a severed arm in such a short time meant that he could regrow it no matter how serious his injuries were. This undoubtedly gave Zhao Yuanyang a fearless fighting spirit and courage. He was not afraid of death and was braver than any other Asura. Chu Li frowned. The 10 great Asuras were lying on the ground in the distance, motionless. They were entangled with his meteor finger energy. The wounds on their hands and chests had already disappeared. It was obvious that they had been healed by the power of the Asura statue. However, their recovery speed was slow and was far slower than Zhao Yuanyang's. Bam 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 bam. He exchanged more than 10 blows with Zhao Yuanyang. Zhao Yuanyang pushed him back down the stairs and returned to Li Yuehua's side. Bam! Li Yuehua suddenly dodged and hit his chest with her palm. He could not avoid it. Li Yuehua's body movement technique was too fast and her palm was too fast. Before he could react, he was hit. His chest was in intense pain and his vision turned black. However, he was still standing in the same place and was not sent flying. He wished that he could be sent flying to reduce some of the force. However, he was hit where he was and had to bear all the force. It was clear that Li Yuehua's palm energy was exquisite. Bam bam bam, several palm strikes landed on Chu Li's chest. Chu Li stood there in a daze like a stone statue, allowing Li Yuehua to hit him. Li Yuehua was shrouded in a white light. Her figure and face could not be seen clearly. There was only a white light and a slender hand outside the white light. This hand was like a lover's caress as it patted Chu Li's chest. Zhao Yuanyang rushed over and hit Chu Li's forehead with his palm. He wanted to crush Chu Li's brain. Bam! Chu Li, who was motionless, suddenly tilted his head and hit Zhao Yuanyang's forehead. Chapter 2306. Although Zhao Yuanyang was dead, his palm landed on Chu Li's shoulder. It felt like an axe had struck him. He felt half of his body go numb. If it was not for his strong body, he would have been split in half. Zhao Yuanyang's brain had exploded. Chu Li was certain that he would die. Li Yuehua's palm energy made Chu Li's organs boil. It was as if he had fallen into lava, and all he breathed was boiling white gas. He ignored the pain and glided into the basilica. Goddess Li Yuehua flashed like a ghost and stood in front of the basilica. She extended her palm and shot a white light at Chu Li. Chu Li took a step forward to avoid the white light and arrived in front of Li Yuehua. Although he could not see her face or figure clearly, he followed his instincts and slammed into a ball of white light. The huge surging force sent him flying. Li Yuehua turned into a ball of white light and chased him in the air. Chu Li did not dare to take her palm energy head-on. It was strange and strong. It was like lightning but not lightning. When the palm energy entered his body froze and could not move. It was very strange. He could not block Li Yuehua's strange palm energy. He could only survive by attacking. He could kill Zhao Yuanyang but not Li Yuehua. He believed that the key to the Asura King statue was the 2 statues. If he could destroy the 2 statues, he could cut off the source of Li Yuehua's power. He could then defeat or even kill her. If it was not for his strong body and the power of the divine demon grass, he would have been killed by Li Yuehua. Bang! A bloody mist exploded. Zhao Yuanyang's body finally turned into a bloody mist. Then, a heart of azure appeared and disappeared. Li Yuehua scoffed softly. It was like thunder exploding in Chu Li's ears. Then, she turned into a white light and shot at him. He could not dodge. Chu Li had already activated the sacrificial power, but he was no match for Li Yuehua. The 9th level of the Azura power technique was useless. If this continued, he would definitely die. Bang 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 bang. Li Yuehua hit Chu Li and made him unable to move. He endured her palm attack after palm attack. In the blink of an eye, Chu Li was severely injured and almost died from vomiting blood. A thought flashed across Chu Li's mind, and the heavenly demonic orb in his chest suddenly moved. All of a sudden, all of his inner energy dissipated, leaving an empty space. Li Yuehua's tyrannical and exquisite palm force entered her body, and the heavenly demonic spirit devouring art instantly swallowed it. The following palm strikes were also swallowed by the heavenly demonic spirit devouring art. Then, at the risk of her body exploding, she combined the 4 palm forces into one force and sent them back. Bang! Li Yuehua was sent flying. Her body shone brightly like a sun in the sky. Chu Li took the opportunity to sneak into the basilica and rushed towards the statue of the Azura deity king. He wanted to destroy the statue of the Azura deity king and cut off Li Yuehua's source of power. Destroying the power of the deity king palace had been bothering him constantly. The reason why Li Yuehua was able to hit him was not only because of her extraordinary speed, but also because of the resistance force that kept surging on the ground, binding him. Bang! The Azura deity king's statue suddenly lit up, producing an incomparably huge force that sent him flying. Once again, Chu Li flew out of the basilica and was met by Li Yuehua in the air. At this moment, his entire body was numb from the power of the Azura deity king's statue. He could not circulate his inner energy, not even the heavenly demonic spirit devouring technique. Bang 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 bang! Li Yuehua's palms kept hitting Chu Li. As if he was frozen, he kept flying up and down, unable to retaliate at all. Li Yuehua's palm energy was too strange. It shook his body so much that it felt like it was falling apart, leaving him with no energy to circulate. He first activated the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture in an attempt to neutralize this strange palm energy. Unfortunately, the power of the Azura deity king's statue was surging violently under his feet, leaving him with nowhere to borrow power or convert it. Left with no choice, he could only activate the heavenly demonic spirit devouring technique. Fortunately, he could already use the heavenly demonic spirit devouring technique. Bang! Li Yuehua was sent flying, flashing dazzlingly in the air. She was pushed back by the heavenly demonic spirit devouring technique. Chu Li's eyes glowed blue as he stabbed out with the god's punishing thunder sword. Bang! Li Yuehua suddenly sped up in the air, the white light flashing even faster. Bang 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 bang! The god's punishing thunder sword stabbed out continuously, causing Li Yuehua to fly further and faster. However, Chu Li knew that the god's punishing thunder sword was useless. It was blocked by Li Yuehua's protective energy, and could only send her flying. He took the opportunity to shoot out of the plaza. Li Yuehua struck out with her palm energy, shooting it at Chu Li like a rainbow piercing through the sun. Chu Li dodged it easily from afar. After 2 flashes, he was about to escape from the ruler of God's palace. At this moment, the 10 great Azuras had already recovered and blocked his way. Chu Li's body floated like a ghost. The 10 great Azuras had powerful cultivation levels, but they were like wooden stakes in front of him. They could only watch helplessly as Chu Li's divine blood claw pierced through their chests and turned into a red mist. Chu Li had activated the sacrificial divine power to its limit, unleashing his cultivation level to the fullest. Meanwhile, Li Yuehua had already stopped in the air, then turned into a white light and shot toward him. Chu Li could not be bothered with the remaining 2 great Azuras. He immediately leaped out of the plaza and arrived outside the ruler of God's palace. As soon as he stepped out of the ruler of God's palace, he instantly spat out a mouthful of blood and looked a little dispirited. This heavy injury had almost overturned his internal organs. As soon as he stepped out of the ruler of God's palace, spiritual energy from the ground surged into his body continuously and healed his body. Liuehua's voice rang in the minds of all the Azuras. Everyone, retreat into the house. Do not fight anyone. The great Azuras who were preparing to enter the basilica were stunned. When they saw Chu Li shooting out and Liuehua chasing after him, they instantly understood that she was chasing after Chu Li and hurriedly tried to stop her. Chu Li's figure flashed like a ghost and avoided them. Liuehua's body was like a white light. In the blink of an eye, she appeared in front of Chu Li and glided forward with her palm. Chu Li laughed coldly and extended his right claw to meet the attack. As he stepped on the ground, spiritual energy surged into his body, making him extremely confident. Bang! White light flashed around Liuehua. However, Chu Li glided backward and used the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture to dissolve the strange palm energy. His body did not freeze. He had a deep understanding of the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture. However, due to his cultivation level, he could not unleash its power. Now that he had stepped out of the ruler of God's palace, he was connected to the ground and could use the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture with ease. In a flash, Liuehua waved her palm again. The palm energy turned into a white light. Bang! Chu Li countered with his palm. Their palm energies collided and collided continuously. Liuehua's power was so vast that Chu Li was still not her match. However, he had the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture to divert the force. With the ground as his foundation, even if he could not win, he could divert the force and not be at a disadvantage. He determined that Liuehua was burning herself like the Great Light technique. If this dragged on for too long, Liuehua would die. Ma Shu Hua Ji. Liuehua suddenly stopped. The light around her immediately faded, revealing her fair face and skin that looked like it was carved from white jade. She did not move and looked up at the sky. Chu Li felt a strange force in the sky, so he looked up as well. He saw a blood-red light falling straight down and into Liuehua's forehead. Her white robe fluttered even though there was no wind. Her body slowly floated up and the light in her eyes dissipated. She became cold and eerie as if she had become another person. She stood in the void and looked down at Chu Li. Chu Li's expression changed. At this moment, Liuehua had become one with heaven and earth. She stood in front of him like a towering mountain that could not be moved. Liuehua uttered one word. Die. Chu Li felt his vision blur. Then, he felt a sharp pain in his chest. When he looked down, he realized that her arm had pierced into his chest and dug out his heart. Chapter 2307. Chu Li's expression changed as he glared at Liuehua. Liuehua's bright eyes were devoid of any human emotion. She looked at him quietly as if she was looking at an ant. Her right hand was holding a beating red heart. It was his heart. The white palm and the bright red heart formed a strong contrast, creating a fatal impact. If it were anyone else, they would have fainted at the sight as they could not bear it. His heart had been plucked away, and all the energy in his body poured out like a flood. Chu Li had the life and death scripture and the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture to rely on, so he did not mind and desperately thought of a solution. If he really fell into her hands, he would die without a complete corpse. He would die for real and could only cultivate in the Wheel Pagoda and look for a chance to revive. With an idea, he stopped the heavenly demonic orb at his precordium and replaced it. The heavenly demonic orb usually absorbed energy and rarely released it. At this moment, the energy that it had been absorbing suddenly surged out like a flood and made up for the energy that was pouring out, forming a delicate balance. Chu Li knew that the heavenly demonic orb could not hold on for long. He activated the special skill of the Azura power technique, and the beating heart in Li Yuehua's hand exploded. Bang! The red mist dissipated, and Li Yuehua stood there calmly. Her right palm was still as white as jade, and there was no sign of injury. The corner of her mouth curled up slightly as she sneered. However, her sneer quickly froze as Chu Li had disappeared. She regained her composure and shot out two solid white lights from her eyes. They formed two light pillars that swept across the surroundings as if they could penetrate all the buildings and see inside. She swiftly floated along the street with her white clothes fluttering in the wind. The light pillars formed by her eyes scanned the surroundings. Chu Li had already entered a cellar in the southern Honorable Lord's residence. He used the Deva shedding technique to pass through the Honorable Lord's residence's formation and appeared in the cellar in a flash without anyone noticing. He then sat cross-legged in the middle of a pile of treasures. His body aged rapidly as he became more familiar with the life and death scripture. In the blink of an eye, he died. Li Yuehua glided across the Honorable Lord's residence. Since the Honorable Lord's residence was equipped with a formation and many treasures, Li Yuehua did not bother with the treasures in the cellar that Chu Li was in that could conceal his force. No matter how powerful Chu Li was, it was impossible for him to break into the Honorable Lord's residence's formation when his heart had been dug out. She quickly circled the city, but there was no news of Chu Li wherever she went. She returned to the Divine King Palace and took out an exquisite statue of the Goddess King. It was about the size of a palm, but it was no different from the statue of the Goddess King in the palace. It seemed to be made according to the scale of the Goddess King's statue. She placed the exquisite statue of the Goddess King in front of her knees and closed her eyes slightly. Her white hands formed a mudra and remained motionless. A streak of red light descended from the sky and landed on Ling Long's little Divine King statue. Then, it turned into a streak of white light and shot into the space between her brows. Her eyes quickly trembled, and she began to deduce. She wanted to see through the mysteries of heaven and find Chu Li. At this moment, she was still in the state of God's possession. The one controlling her body was not Li Yuehua, but the God that descended from the upper heaven. When she performed the art of divination, she was blessed by the heavens, and the power was even stronger than Li Yuehua herself. After a moment, Li Yuehua frowned and muttered to herself. Her emotionless eyes narrowed slightly, and she looked up at the sky thoughtfully. The result of her deduction was that Chu Li was dead. Although Chu Li was extremely difficult to deduce, and it was as if there was a layer of fog that was faintly discernible, she still managed to deduce the final result. Chu Li had died and completely disappeared from the world. Li Yuehua let out a sigh of relief. Those who had their hearts plucked out would definitely die. Even if they had the physique of Azura, they would still die if their hearts were plucked out. However, it was a pity that Chu Li had died just like that. He had cultivated the Azura power technique to the 9th level. She did not feel the blood aura approaching his body. Chu Li had a treasure that covered up the blood aura, but the blood aura could only be covered up by a celestial. Unless this celestial had cultivated the Azura power technique to the 9th level and could turn the blood aura into his own, he would no longer be tainted by the blood aura. This Chu Li was truly a genius. It was a pity that he died just like that without completing his cultivation and ascending to the next level. There was only one way for people on this level to want to go to the next level, ascension. The method of ascension was to cultivate a mystical technique from the next level. If one cultivated it to perfection, one could ascend. If one did not cultivate it to perfection, one would not be able to ascend. If one did not cultivate a martial art from the next level, one would not be able to ascend. This was an extremely harsh condition, but for Azuras, it was a unique advantage. The Azura power technique was a mystical technique from the next level. As long as one could become a deity king, one could ascend. If one cultivated it to perfection, one could also ascend. She gave up on her pursuit. She opened her eyes and carefully placed the small and exquisite goddess king's statue back. She got up and fluttered to the basilica. Standing on the steps, she said softly, "The city of divine kings is open. You are free to move around." When all the Azuras in the city of divine kings heard this, they instantly cheered. Especially the female Azuras, they could not withstand such restrictions at all. When they heard that the restrictions were lifted, they cheered. The originally empty streets of the city of divine kings were quickly filled with Azuras. Shops opened one after another. In a short while, the bustling city was restored. It was as if the previous silence and desolation never existed. Chu Li fell into a deep sleep. He felt like he was soaking in a hot spring. Leisurely, he slowly opened his eyes. He could feel a strange aura surging from the ground. This was the aura of the chakra pagoda, which could strengthen and nourish one's soul. At this moment, he felt refreshed as if he had just woken up from a deep sleep. He looked down at his chest. It was smooth as if it had never been injured. His heart was beating vigorously. Each beat seemed to contain 1,000 pounds of force, which was stronger than his original heart. Chu Li smiled. His heart was stronger than before, which meant that his strength had become stronger. Of course, it was the wonders of the life and death scripture and the power of the divine demon herb. Then, his smile faded as he recalled the situation when he met Li Yuehua. At that time, a tyrannical force descended from the sky and attached itself to Li Yuehua. He was very familiar with this situation. It was the descent of a celestial. He had seen the descent of celestials many times in the lower realm, but it was his first time seeing it on this first heaven. Compared to the lower realm and the outland and the upper heaven had almost no connection at all. It was as if the upper heaven did not exist. If he could not control the spiritual energy of the upper heaven, he might not have believed in the existence of the upper heaven. The lower realm and the outland were connected by the divine gate, but the outland and the upper heaven seemed to be cut off. He had never seen a passage, and it was said that there was no passage either. He had never seen the descent of a celestial from the upper heaven. This time, he had seen it for himself. The upper heaven was indeed extraordinary, and he was no match for it. Li Yuehua was able to invite someone from the upper heaven, so she must have a strong background. It was better for him to avoid her. However, the Azuras and Grand Azuras outside were all his spirit medicine and a shortcut to improve his cultivation. His eyes lit up, and he could not wait to rush out and kill. Then, he thought of Li Yuehua and shook his head. He could escape this time, but he might not be so lucky the next time he met her. Moreover, he did not know the details of the upper heaven. If she could see through him and find a way to restrain him, it would be bad. Chapter 2308. Along the way, he noticed that the city of Divine King had regained its liveliness. He had the urge to go on a killing spree and kill to his heart's content. If he killed all the Azuras in the city of Divine King, his cultivation level would rise to an unbelievable level and he would become an Azura deity king. Unfortunately, this idea was just an impulse and could not be realized. Li Yuehua was in the city. If she invited a celestial from the upper heaven to descend again, he would definitely die. Even the life and death scripture and earth matrix and reincarnation scripture might not work, so he had to avoid her. He pondered as he walked out of the city of Divine King. Li Yuehua must have a price to pay for inviting a celestial to descend. Moreover, the price was not small. Otherwise, she would have invited a celestial from the beginning. Moreover, were there any other restrictions to inviting a celestial to descend? Could it be done in the city of Divine King or in the foreign battlefield? He immediately shook his head. She should not be able to use celestial descend in the foreign battlefield because the void of the foreign battlefield was strange and could not be shifted. It was possible that she could not descend from the upper heaven to the foreign battlefield. However, what if she used celestial descend in the city of Divine King and then entered the foreign battlefield? This could not be avoided, so he could not be too close to the city of Divine King. He had to go on a killing spree far away from the city of Divine King, or else Li Yuehua could quickly find him with celestial descend. He left the city of Divine King and took out his 9 swords and luminous pearl from the Chakram Pagoda and headed for the Grandmaster's boundary. When he was 100 miles away from the city of Divine King, he began to go on a killing spree. He killed all the Asuras within the range of the omniscient mirror, and his cultivation level kept increasing. When he returned to Wulong City, his cultivation level was 3 times higher than when he left the city. He was very satisfied. If he could kill 2 more times, even if he could not reach the 10th level of the Asura power technique, he should be able to block a few attacks from the celestial descend Li Yuehua. He might not be so weak. He buried the treasure under a tree and marked it down before turning around to kill his way back. However, when he realized that there were almost no Asuras in the extraterrestrial battlefield, he immediately grew wary and turned around to return to Wulong City. He guessed that Li Yuehua already knew he was not dead and summoned all the Asuras back so he could not kill them. Chu Li knew that Li Yuehua would definitely be able to find him once he turned around and attacked again. He had to first figure out the restrictions of descending from the upper heaven and find a way to break it before dealing with Li Yuehua. After entering Wulong City, he disappeared in a flash and instantly teleported to High Sky Peak. As soon as he stepped foot into Great Dawn Peak, he was instantly surprised. In the next moment, he appeared within a small courtyard on Great Dawn Peak. This was a small courtyard that belonged to a disciple of Great Dawn Peak, and it was extremely ordinary. However, the people within the courtyard were extraordinary. Dressed in a light yellow gown, she was slender and graceful. She was wielding a long sword. The gleam of the sword was like snow, brightening up the courtyard. It was Lu Yurong. Chu Li suddenly appeared in the courtyard, but Lu Yurong ignored him and continued to practice her swordsmanship. The sword flashed and the murderous intent was thick. The temperature in the courtyard suddenly became cold, like an icehouse. Chu Li smiled and stared at Lu Yurong without blinking. Lu Yurong continued to ignore him. She continued to practice with her sword, and the gleam of her sword became brighter and brighter. This set of swordsmanship was exquisite, and she had mastered it to a very high level. The gleam of her sword flowed, and its power became more and more shocking. One could clearly see the speed of her improvement. Each strike was more powerful than the one before. Lu Yurong's posture was superior to that of the lower realm. Chu Li gave a fist salute and smiled. "Congratulations!" Humph! Lu Yurong suddenly sheathed her sword, and the courtyard instantly darkened. Chu Li smiled. "Yurong, are you blaming me for not visiting you? I wouldn't dare to delay a busy person like you." Lu Yurong gave him a sidelong glance and walked lightly to the gazebo next to her. She sat down and presented her beautiful back to him. She was extremely beautiful, and there was not a single part of her that was not beautiful. Just by looking at her back, one could tell how beautiful she was. Chu Li smiled and poured a cup of tea for her. "This time, I almost lost my life in the city of Divine Kings." Lu Yurong turned to look at him and took the teacup. She frowned slightly. "Do you really want to die? The city of Divine Kings is a forbidden area." Chu Li nodded. "As expected of a forbidden area. What happened?" Lu Yurong blew at the hot air and took a sip of tea. Her clear eyes stared into his. Chu Li told her everything that happened. Lu Yurong frowned. "You've already killed 3 Supreme Lords?" Chu Li smiled and nodded. "Only Northern Supreme Lord Sui Miaozhu is left." "This Sui Miaozhu must be very beautiful, right?" Lu Yurong scoffed. Chu Li laughed. "Yes, she's beautiful, but she's too cruel. She kills without batting an eye. But this time, I'm lucky. She's in isolated cultivation. If she attacked together with Zhao Yuanyang and Li Yuehua, I'm afraid I wouldn't have been able to survive. If that's the case, the Azura's vitality has been greatly damaged. Lu Yurong asked. You managed to injure the Azura all by yourself. Chu Li slowly shook his head. It's not that serious. No one knows how many Azuras there are. That was just the City of Divine Kings. No one knows how many big cities like the City of Divine Kings there are in the Azura realm. If the Deity King Palace and the Supreme Lord's residence are here, the City of Divine Kings should be similar to the fairies' capital. If the City of Divine Kings is damaged, the Azura realm will be damaged too. Lu Yurong pondered. There might not be as many Azuras as you think. Resurrection is a cycle, so it feels like there are many. Chu Li said, I'll get to the bottom of this. Yurong, how did you become a Tai Hao Peak disciple? Who knows? Lu Yurong shook her head. I was cultivating in the sect when I suddenly received an invitation from the Tai Hao Peak. I somehow became a Tai Hao Peak disciple. I came to report, but the sect forced me to come. After seeing the invitation, the mysterious Lady of Nine Heavens was in jubilation. Everyone was extremely happy. They thought it was a rare opportunity. The opportunity for the mysterious Lady of Nine Heavens to advance had finally appeared. As long as Lu Yurong could finish her studies and step out of the Tai Hao Peak, the mysterious Lady of Nine Heavens would definitely advance to the next level and be not far from the ninth heaven. Lu Yurong did not think much of it. Cultivating in the mysterious Lady of Nine Heavens was good too. It was quiet and free without too many restrictions. She did not want to go to the Tai Hao Peak, but was forced by the sect leader and the others. It had not been 2 days since she arrived at the Tai Hao Peak. She realized that the martial arts of the Tai Hao Peak were indeed amazing, far beyond the mysterious Lady of Nine Heavens. She was eagerly cultivating and did not expect Chu Li to appear here. Chu Li said, The disciples of the Tai Hao Peak are selected from the most talented disciples of each sect. Yurong, you're talented, so you'll naturally be chosen. Shao Qi and Ming Yu were also chosen. Lu Yurong already knew. She rolled her eyes at him. You don't have to worry now. Chu Li smiled embarrassedly. Have you had any unpleasant experiences? No. Lu Yurong waved her hand. All right, you should get back to work first. Chu Li said, There's no rush. I don't have time to chat with you. I need to cultivate. Lu Yurong scoffed. Chu Li laughed and drank the tea in one gulp. All right, I'll come back later. Lu Yurong waved her hand. Chu Li put down the teacup and suddenly disappeared. The next moment, he appeared outside the Peak Leader's basilica. A disciple on duty saw him and went in to report. Soon, he came out. Young Master Chu, please enter. Chapter 2309. Greetings, Peak Leader. Chu Li closed fist saluted Wang Shoren, who was sitting in the armchair. Wang Shoren put down the scroll in his hand, stroked his beard and smiled. Your cultivation has improved greatly, congratulations. Chu Li smiled. Peak Leader, can Song Wuji summon a deva? Wang Shoren stopped stroking his beard and looked at him in shock. Chu Li said, he should be able to summon a deva? That's why he's invincible? Song Wuji can be invincible because of his high cultivation level and no one can control him. However, he can summon a deva too. This is the uniqueness of the Thunder Pool. Wang Shoren shook his head and sighed. Your cultivation level is not as high as Song Wuji's. With Song Wuji's trump card, you won't stand a chance. Chu Li said, there must be a limit to summoning a deva. That's true, Wang Shoren said. We won't summon a deva unless it's absolutely necessary. Chu Li said, it's not that we're afraid of it, but there's a price to pay, right? I think there must be a huge price to summon a deva. It's not just a matter of embarrassment or shame. Wang Shoren stroked his beard and pondered. Chu Li suddenly realized and chuckled. Looks like we can summon a deva at Tai Hao Peak too. This is a last resort, Wang Shoren shook his head. We won't use it unless it's absolutely necessary. Chu Li asked, "What's the price?" Wang Shoren sighed. "It's easy to summon a deva but hard to send him away. It's easy to summon a deva but it's not easy to return to the upper heaven. There's a huge price to pay and you'll need to burn your lifespan, at least 1,000 years. 1,000 years of lifespan? Chu Li nodded slowly. Looks like it can only be used once. He thought of Song Wuji's art of ageless longevity. With the art of ageless longevity, Song Wuji was blessed by nature and could use the Deva's descent without limit. How long is the lifespan of an Asura? Chu Li asked. Wang Shoren shook his head. No one knows. If there's no accident, I'm afraid it's no less than 1,000 years. Did you encounter someone who used the Deva's descent? Chu Li said, "The Asura goddess Li Yuehua. You were able to force Li Yuehua to use Deva descent. That's rare." Wang Shoren stroked his beard and smiled. Song Wuji has an ageless longevity technique that can absorb lifespan. Chu Li pondered. Does Tai Hao Peak not have it? Yes. Wang Shoren pondered for a moment and nodded slowly. However, lifespan is divided into innate and acquired ones. The lifespan taken is only acquired, and the heavenly beings need not only acquired lifespan to return to the upper heaven, but also innate lifespan. How much innate lifespan? Chu Li quickly asked. At least 100 years. Wang Shoren said. That's why, unless it's absolutely necessary, we won't invite the celestials to descend. You've forced this goddess into a corner. It's really rare. Chu Li sighed. I almost died. To be able to survive the descent of a celestial is already extraordinary. Wang Shoren smiled and said, There must be some luck. You might not be so lucky next time. It's best not to provoke them. Chu Li nodded slowly. How long can the descent of the celestial being last? Half an hour at most. Wang Shoren sighed. Any longer and I'm afraid I won't be able to withstand it. It can't be performed in the foreign battlefields, right? Chu Li asked again. Wang Shoren said, The void of the foreign battlefields is different from other places. Celestials can't descend, but it's fine to enter the foreign battlefields after descending. So, don't think that you won't be afraid in the foreign battlefield. Chu Li asked, Half an hour? It might be even shorter, it depends on the person's cultivation level. Wang Shoren said, Every time they descend, it'll cause great damage to the body. They'll need to recuperate for a while, so they can't perform it continuously. Chu Li's spirit was lifted and his eyes suddenly lit up. But with spirit medicine and secret skills, it might not take too long, Wang Shoren said. Chu Li's gaze returned to normal and he shook his head. As a goddess, she must have a way to recuperate. Moreover, she could borrow the power of the Asura deity king statue. He had seen the speed of recovery in the deity king palace. It was amazing that she could grow an arm in such a short time. Peak leader, if we can kill the goddess, what are the consequences? Chu Li pondered. If they could lure the goddess, Li Yuehua, to the foreign battlefields and wait for the celestials to finish descending, then they could take the opportunity to assassinate her. They might have a chance to kill the goddess. If we kill one, there'll be a second one. Wang Shoren shook his head. Moreover, the goddess won't be too far away from the city of divine kings. There's no need to waste your efforts. Besides, the goddess is very difficult to kill. Chu Li slowly nodded. How many cities does Asura have? I don't know. Wang Shoren shook his head and sighed. We haven't found out yet. Humans can't enter the city of divine kings. Back then, there was a person who became the Asura deity king. Unfortunately, the Asura deity king ascended immediately after stepping into the Asura boundary, so he couldn't send back any news. Chu Li frowned. Ascended immediately? Yes. Wang Shoren sighed. He was also a genius. To be able to cultivate the Asura power technique to perfection, I don't know how much suffering he endured and how many fortuitous encounters he had. Unfortunately, He ascended immediately after stepping into the Azura boundary, so he couldn't lead Azura. Otherwise, the situation wouldn't be like this. Chuli nodded thoughtfully. He secretly shook his head. Once a Celestial successfully cultivated the Azura power technique, they would ascend as soon as they stepped into the Azura realm. This was a very powerful move, and it directly eliminated all other possibilities. This was to make Celestials and Azura's enemies for all eternity, with no way to reconcile. He suddenly felt a little dispirited. He had wasted his efforts. It was impossible for him to cultivate the Azura power technique to perfection and lead Azura to no longer be enemies with Celestials. Celestials and Azura would always be enemies. If he really cultivated the Azura power technique to perfection, he would not dare to step into the Azura boundary again. If he ascended directly, he might become an Azura after ascending. That would be a great punishment, so he would rather not ascend. The senior who cultivated the Azura power technique to perfection must have had the same thoughts as him. He only realized later that he had been tricked. Chuli asked, "Peak leader, do you have any records of that senior?" "Yes," Wang Shoren slowly said. Senior Wu Jing was an outstanding person of his generation. He was extremely talented and had countless fortuitous encounters. In the end, he perfected the Azura power technique and ascended directly to the first heaven. However, Senior Wu was a loner and rarely interacted with others. Very few people know of his whereabouts. Chuli said, "If that's the case, no one knows what martial arts he cultivated and what fortuitous encounters he had? Only bits and pieces." Wang Shoren shook his head. "It's hard to gain anything." Chuli frowned. Wang Shoren stood up and walked to the bookshelf in the corner. He took out a thin book and passed it to Chuli. "This is Wu Zheng's life story. It's the most detailed record. Other people might not have such a record." Chuli looked at him doubtfully. Wang Shoren said, "He was a disciple of Taihao Peak." Chuli looked at him in surprise. Wang Shoren shook his head and sighed. Unfortunately, although he was a disciple of Taihao Peak, due to his personality, he did not interact much with his fellow disciples. It was a great pity. Chuli nodded. He never thought that Senior Wu Jing was a disciple of Taihao Peak. He thought he was a disciple of some unknown small faction. Chapter 23:10. What impressed him was the Taihao Peak's heritage. As expected of the Taihao Peak, they had such a talented person, yet they kept it a secret. Very few people knew that the first person to perfect the Azura power technique in 10,000 years was a disciple of the Taihao Peak. "Peak leader, do you know the key to Senior Wu's perfect cultivation?" Chuli asked. Wang Shoren sighed and paced around with his hands behind his back. He shook his head. "This is what we've always wanted to know. Unfortunately, Senior Wu is a loner and no one knows what adventures he has had. However, his incredible luck is the root of the problem. It's impossible to perfect the Azura power technique if he cultivates it step by step. It's not a matter of aptitude." Chuli nodded slowly. He already had such an experience. Others thought that his aptitude was not good because of the life and death scripture. His appearance was changed by the life and death scripture, but he was stronger on the inside. When he first started cultivating, his aptitude was not good. However, with these adventures and the changes of the life and death scripture, his aptitude was unparalleled in the world. He also had unparalleled comprehension. With his aptitude, cultivating the Azura power technique to the 9th level was hopeless. He could not find any hope of breaking through to the 10th level. He had a feeling that even if he increased his power by 10 times, he would not be able to reach the 10th level. In the end, he still needed opportunities and a deeper understanding of the Azura divine sigil. Unfortunately, this was the most difficult, much more difficult than increasing his cultivation level. He had already reached the limit of his understanding of the Azura divine sigil. However, it was not enough. Even Azura could not compare to his understanding of the Azura divine sigil. It seemed that he still had to enter the Azura realm to find a way to deepen his understanding of the Azura divine sigil. It was impossible to perfect the cultivation in the Grandmaster realm. He believed that if he cultivated the Azura power technique to the 10th level, he would be able to dominate the world. As for ascension, he did not have to go to the Azura realm. Only then would he be able to fight Song Wuji. Without perfecting the Azura power technique, he would definitely die if he went to Song Wuji. Wang Shoren looked at Chu Li and smiled as he sat down. Chu Li, you're also a person with incredible luck. There's still hope. Chu Li said, I'm not that lucky. Peak leader, is there anyone from Taihao Peak who ascended? Yes. Wang Shoren nodded and said, but it's not easy to ascend. There have only been a few people in tens of thousands of years, and they can only be found by chance. The easiest way to ascend is for those in the boundless realm. Chu Li gently nodded. The Titanium Temple's 10 lifetimes of Dharma is indeed very easy to ascend to immortality. The cycle of reincarnation is endless. It's a supreme technique. It is indeed a supreme technique. Wang Shoren sighed and said, unfortunately, one needs to have a deep affinity with Buddhism. How many people in the world can cultivate the Dharma of 10 lifetimes of enlightenment? There are no more than 20 people in the Vajra Temple of the Boundless Victory Realm. Chu Li asked, what about the Heaven-Shaking Tower? It is impossible to ascend from the Heaven-Shaking Tower, Wang Shoren said. It is a taboo of the heavens. No matter how strong one's cultivation is, he will not be able to ascend. Chu Li nodded, stood up and fist saluted, ready to leave. Wang Shoren said, Chu Li, I'm afraid it'll be very difficult for your wife and your 2 female friends to ascend. They'll need external help. Chu Li raised his eyebrows. Wang Shoren sighed and said, without external help, there is almost no one who can ascend through cultivation alone. Opportunity is the key. Chu Li slowly nodded. If he could ascend, the 3 women could not be left behind. Just like how they were now in the Outland. Even though the Outland was rich in spiritual energy and was far more prosperous, without the 3 women, he still felt like he was in a foreign land and could not feel at ease. Although Devis had a long lifespan, they should not waste their lives if they wanted to ascend. They needed to plan early and choose the path they wanted to take. Chu Li appeared outside the Flying Heaven faction in Wu Yuanxi's appearance. He raised his head and looked at the mountain where the Flying Heaven faction was located. It was so tall that it seemed to reach the heavens and was filled with vitality. He knew about the Flying Heaven faction's formation. Without waiting for the disciple who was guarding the formation to appear, he entered the formation in a flash. After taking a few steps, he was already inside the Flying Heaven faction and waved at the disciple who greeted him. Senior Brother Wu. Senior Brother Wu. As he walked up the stairs, all the disciples he met along the way greeted him respectfully with a hint of reverence. Chu Li smiled and nodded. Without stopping, he arrived outside the sect leader's basilica. Zhao Lingfeng's voice came from inside the basilica. Come in. Chu Li stepped into the basilica and fist saluted. Greetings, sect leader. Zhao Lingfeng was dressed in a green robe and stood in front of the window with his hands behind his back. He smiled at him. You're finally back. Chu Li fist saluted and smiled. Did you gain anything? Zhao Lingfeng came to the armchair and sat down. Did you gain anything from staying in the city of 10,000 swords? Chu Li shook his head. I went into the foreign battlefield and fought with Azura. No wonder. Zhao Lingfeng nodded. Now that Azura and Devis are fighting each other, they are facing a huge change. Their relationship with the heavenly demonic realm has fallen. Chu Li asked, was it like this before the deity king of Azura took office? Same. Zhao Lingfeng nodded. It's a cycle every 500 years. It's best not to go to the foreign battlefield. Chu Li said, Sect Leader, I want to enter the Azura realm. Why do you want to enter the Azura realm? Zhao Lingfeng was surprised. Chu Li smiled. I heard that female Azuras can improve their cultivation. Haha, that's just a rumor. Zhao Lingfeng shook his head and laughed. You believe that too? The heavenly demonic realm can improve the Azura power technique, but it can't improve the heavenly demonic technique. You don't have to waste your time. Chu Li frowned and slowly asked, Why is that? It's related to your bloodline. Zhao Lingfeng said, No one can figure it out. Your cultivation level has improved greatly. Chu Li smiled. It's a narrow escape. It's not easy to go to the foreign battlefield. Zhao Lingfeng sighed. The foreign battlefield is the scariest at this time. The Azuras have gone crazy. They're 10 times scarier than usual. It's best not to provoke them. Chu Li said, I tried to get close to the city of Divine King, but I couldn't. You can't enter the city of Divine King from there. It's best to enter from the Azura realm. Zhao Lingfeng nodded. Chu Li asked, How many cities are there in the Azura realm? This information was not available in the Grandmaster's realm. After fighting for so long, they still did not know the actual situation of the Azuras. It was unbelievable. There were many smart people in the Grandmaster's realm. There should have been people who had explored the Azura realm and succeeded. However, they knew very little about the Azura realm. The furthest they had explored was the city of Divine King. Chu Li guessed that this information was obtained from the heavenly demonic realm, or maybe it was deliberately leaked by the heavenly demonic realm. 36 cities. Zhao Lingfeng said, but the city of Divine King is the biggest city. It guards the foreign battlefield. The other 35 cities are prosperous too. Don't underestimate the Azuras. You might think that they're brainless because they're cold. They're actually very smart. It's just that the people in the city of Divine King are cultivation maniacs. The Azuras in the other 35 cities are no different from us in the heavenly demonic realm. Chu Li nodded. Zhao Lingfeng thought about it and took out a metal tag. This is the pass for the Azura realm. With this, you can enter the city unimpeded. Otherwise, only Azuras can enter the city. Chu Li smiled and took it. Chapter 23:11. Wait. Zhao Lingfeng stood up and strode out of the hall. Chu Li waited in the hall, looking at the spacious and bright hall, lost in thought. His identity as Wu Yuanxi was becoming more and more flawless. When he immersed himself in the role, he treated himself as a disciple of the Flying Heaven faction, making it difficult for him to distinguish between the real and the fake. His Sky Demon scripture had such a magical effect, allowing him to completely immerse himself in the role he was playing. His original consciousness had taken a back seat, making it impossible for anyone to see through his disguise. When he was in the Beyond Heaven's realm, he always felt that he was out of place. He was still a person from the lower realm, but here, after becoming Wu Yuanxi, he felt a sense of closeness. He was able to blend in with the heavenly demons better. Although the people of the heavenly demon realm also had their own grudges and were selfish and greedy, they were different from the people of the Beyond Heaven's realm. They lacked indifference and arrogance. In the Beyond Heaven's realm, indifference was his first feeling, and arrogance was his second feeling. Even though his cultivation was profound and rare, in the eyes of the people in the Beyond Heaven's realm, he was still someone from the lower realm. They still wouldn't treat him as an equal, which made him even more disappointed. It was difficult for him to integrate with them, and he didn't see himself as a true celestial. He was just a passerby. If it were not for the existence of Shao Qi and the others, he would have directly transformed into Wu Yuanxi and stayed in the Flying Heaven sect. He would have become the leader of the Flying Heaven sect and even dominated the world in the heavenly demon realm. He would not have bothered to stay in the Grandmaster realm. He was lost in his thoughts, but it only lasted for a moment before he heard footsteps approaching. Zhao Lingfeng had returned with a small booklet in his hand. He handed it to Chu Li and said, "This is the map of the Azura realm, as well as some local customs and practices. Once you're in there, do as the Romans do and don't mess around. Otherwise, you'll get into trouble. If you offend the Azuras, it'll be hard for you to get out." Chu Li asked, "They dare to kill heavenly demons?" Once the killing intent surges into their hearts, they won't care if they're sky fiends or not. Zhao Lingfeng sighed. Azura's murderous nature is too strong, and he can't control himself. So, don't provoke him. Chu Li nodded. If you want to go to the Azura realm, go ahead. With your current cultivation, you can already do whatever you want. Zhao Lingfeng smiled and said, "While you're still young, you should travel around the world. In the future, when you're older, even if you want to travel, you won't have the mood to do so anymore." Chu Li smiled and gave a fist salute. "Thank you, sect leader." Zhao Lingfeng waved his hand. Chu Li stood in front of a majestic city, sizing it up, Tiannan City. This Tiannan City was a city adjacent to the Sky Demon Realm, and in the middle was the foreign battleground. However, it was impossible for celestial beings to appear here, because they were situated between the Azura Realm and the Sky Demon Realm, unless they crossed the Sky Demon Realm like him. The two realms were separated by thousands of miles by the extraterrestrial battlefield. The gates of Tiannan City were extremely strange. They were like two pieces of blood jade, crystal clear and glowing with a bloody light. As soon as Chu Li got closer, the heavenly demonic power around his body started to circulate faster, desperately resisting the strange suction force. The 10 Azuras took 2 steps forward and glared at Chu Li. Chu Li took out the token from his inner pocket and channeled his energy into it. Instantly, the strange suction force disappeared, and he regained his composure. He took a closer look at the 2 city gates. Although they were different from the 2 city gates in the City of Divine Kings, they were equally strange and mysterious, which made him extremely curious. He wanted to rush up and study them. When they saw him take out the token, the 10 Azuras took 2 steps back to make way and retracted their covetous gazes. Chu Li noticed that there were many heavenly demons coming and going from Tiannan City. Before him, 4 had already entered and 2 had come out. As long as he took out the token and channeled the heavenly demonic power, they would be able to enter and exit freely. Chu Li calmly stepped into the city gates, then put away the token and walked inside. After walking for 100 steps and passing through the city corridor, his eyes suddenly lit up, and he was greeted by the noise. On the busy streets, Azuras and heavenly demons were bustling about, and the bustle was not inferior to any other city. Chu Li used the omniscient mirror to observe his surroundings, and all the conspicuous buildings in the city were recorded in his mind. He began to analyze them one by one, and then he found the important mansions to find some top-notch masters to harvest. He had never treated Azuras as humans. Azuras were immortal and indestructible, and he would not feel guilty killing them. Moreover, he could improve his skills, which was great. He wanted to slaughter the entire Tiannan City. However, he still could not bring himself to kill the young Azuras or the female Azuras. He could only find some important people, and those important people often had a profound cultivation level, which could only be achieved through training in the foreign battlefields. Therefore, every Azura master was stained with the blood of heavenly humans, and killing them was the right thing to do. This had nothing to do with good or evil, it was only a matter of position. At night, the moonlight shone like water, and the entire Tiannan City was still bustling, but it was even more prosperous than during the day. Chu Li glided into a mansion. This mansion was luxurious, and there was the sound of bamboo flutes coming from inside. A group of women were singing and dancing, and there were several male Azuras sitting in the main hall, admiring with great interest, shaking their heads from time to time. This changed Chu Li's impression of Azuras. He had always thought that they were cultivation maniacs, with gloomy faces all day long, serious and boring, but now he realized that they were like heavenly humans, or even like heavenly demons, who knew how to enjoy themselves. Of course, there were not many male Azuras in the city who enjoyed themselves like this. This mansion belonged to the deputy governor of the city, who belonged to the governor of the southern Reverend Lord. Chu Li's expression changed slightly, and he realized that the people singing and dancing were heavenly humans. As soon as Chu Li stepped in, he deliberately made some noise. "Who's there?" The protectors in the mansion were instantly alerted, and they shouted in a low voice, afraid that they would disturb the great Azuras who were enjoying the song and dance inside. Then, they pounced on Chu Li. 12 great Azura protectors pounced on Chu Li, their movements swift and fierce. Chu Li's body was like a ghost, floating in front of them, and his palms lightly pressed on their chests. Bang 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 bang. Among the dull sounds, 12 blood mists appeared, and then turned into Azura's heart and disappeared. These 12 great Azuras with strong cultivation levels could not withstand a single blow from him. "Assassin!" A great Azura pounced on him from afar, and his voice resounded through the entire governor's mansion. Suddenly, an endless stream of great Azuras pounced on Chu Li from all directions, and they even formed a formation to trap him in. However, Chu Li was like a ghost, not allowing them to see his face clearly. In the blink of an eye, he slipped out of the encirclement, and each great Azura turned into a blood mist. The number of great Azuras surrounding Chu Li decreased. Although there were many protectors in the governor's mansion, they could not withstand Chu Li's wanton massacre. In a short while, there were only 13 protectors left in the entire governor's mansion. The great Azuras who were listening to the song and dance pounced on Chu Li, along with the governor and the 8 top-notch masters. As Chu Li killed the Azuras, his cultivation level increased, and he was still like a ghost in the face of the governor and the 8 top-notch masters' attacks. He had already activated the sacrificial divine power, and his body movement technique was unimaginably fast. Before the governor and the 8 great Azuras could activate their secret skills, Chu Li had already killed them. Although the governor and the 8 top-notch masters' cultivation levels were high, they were far from being a reverend lord. They could not withstand a single blow from Chu Li, and they could not resist at all. They could not even send a signal for help. Chu Li did not enter the governor's mansion to look for treasures, and he also resisted the urge to inquire about the background of the dancers. He disappeared in a flash, and the next moment, he appeared in an uninhabited mansion. He sat cross-legged on a bed, and then his body rapidly aged and died. He was becoming more and more adept at using the life and death scripture, and he could live and die as he wished. In the ruler of God's palace in Fairy King City, thousands of miles away, Goddess Liyuehua's eyelids suddenly twitched. She hurriedly used her divination technique to predict the tragedy of Tiannan City's governor's mansion, and then disappeared from the ruler of God's palace in a flash. Chapter 23:12. The next moment, Liyuehua appeared in Tiannan City. She stood in the air above Tiannan City, her white dress fluttering in the wind. Her bright eyes glowed as she scanned every inch of Tiannan City, searching for the place she sensed but to no avail. There were thousands of lights in Tiannan City, but none of them matched her expectations. The person who caused so many killings in Tiannan City must have a strong blood aura. Ever since her cultivation level improved, even if there was a treasure to conceal the blood aura, it could not hide her eyes. She could see through it at a glance. She already saw a few heavenly demons in the city with blood aura. They were free and happy, but she did not care. That level of blood aura only killed 1 or 2 Azuras. It was definitely not a massacre like the one at the governor's residence. Moreover, their cultivation level was not at that level. There were not many people with such cultivation level in the world, and they would not come to the Azura boundary to cause trouble. Her sharp intuition quickly thought of Chu Li. If Chuli did it, she would not be surprised. But looking at the results of her divination, this person was obviously dead. Back then, he killed Chuli in the city of divine kings. This was the act of an enlightened master. Chuli was definitely not lucky. But her intuition told her that it was Chuli who did it. Chuli was not dead. Tonight's divination result was the same as before. It showed that Chuli was dead and there was no aura of this person in the world. She couldn't help but guess that it was very likely that Chuli had a top-notch treasure on him that could deceive an enlightened master's spiritual sense and could hide from the enlightened master's deduction. With such a treasure, they couldn't divine anything about him. In fact, Chuli wasn't dead. This treasure was extraordinary. Chuli's luck was really good. Since she could not divine Chuli's location, she could only look for flaws in his actions and find out where he would attack next. This was Tiannan City, the closest to the heavenly demon realm. It was very likely that he wanted to escape to the heavenly demon realm. Once he entered the heavenly demon realm, he could go to the battlefield outside the region and return to the Grandmaster realm. What a good method! She shook her head and her face darkened. If Chuli really wanted to escape to the heavenly demon realm, she could not do anything. Even a divine lady could not run amok in the heavenly demon realm. Otherwise, it would cause a war between the two realms, which would not benefit the Azura boundary. In a flash, she returned to the Godly King City's Godly King Palace. On the evening of the second day, she suddenly felt a sense of foreboding. She pinched her fingers and calculated, and her expression changed slightly. She once again disappeared from the Divine King Palace. The next moment, she appeared in Tianhua City, 1,000 miles away from Tiannan City. Tianhua City had a reputation for being prosperous, far surpassing any other city. Moreover, the city lord was also a top-notch martial artist, and he had the potential to become the next supreme lord. Unfortunately, he had died on the spot, along with all the guards of the city lord's mansion. She had arrived a little late, so she did not see the state of their death. All the masters in the imperial residence of the mayor had disappeared and were reincarnated. However, through this method, she was sure that it was the same person from last time. It might be Chuli. Under the moonlight, she stood in the sky above the Tianhua city governor's office, frowning as she muttered to herself. If this went on, no one in the entire Azura realm would be able to stop him. He was lawless, killing wantonly. No matter what, he had to be killed. Thinking about that, her figure flashed and disappeared. The next moment, she appeared in another city. She stopped outside the city lord's mansion for a while, threw something down, and then disappeared to the next city. She walked one by one until she had finished visiting all 34 cities. Chuli slowly woke up in the morning. After experiencing a reincarnation of life and death, he felt energized. It was as if he had been reborn. The world became lively again, and everything became lively and interesting. He suddenly felt that this was a good way to comprehend martial arts. He deduced the Azura divine sigil in his mind, and as expected, he learned something. Every time he went through life and death, he would have a new understanding of the Azura divine sigil. He could not help but think that if he continuously used the life and death scripture and walked between life and death a few more times, would he be able to completely comprehend the Azura divine sigil? From there, he would be able to complete the state of the Azura power technique. Once this thought came to him, it was hard to stop. Fortunately, he was going to cause havoc in the Azura realm this time. He would have to go through life and death many times, so he could kill Azuras to increase his cultivation level and comprehend the Azura divine sigil at the same time. He flew out of the empty house and rushed to another city. He flew for thousands of miles, and on the evening of the third day, he arrived and entered the city. Then, he followed his usual route and went straight to the Castellan's residence. Before the Castellan and the protectors could react, he killed them. The moon was bright and the stars were sparse. He had just killed the Castellan and the protectors. He felt that his cultivation level had increased, and he was very satisfied. Suddenly, he felt a sense of danger and disappeared from the spot. The next moment, he was 10 feet away. When he turned around, Li Yuehua was already standing in the night sky, looking down at him. Her bright eyes shot out a milky white light. The blue light in Chu Li's eyes flashed and collided with the milky white light. Bang! A muffled sound came from the void. Chu Li was surprised. This Li Yuehua's ability was getting more and more shocking. It was a strange skill that was similar to his thunder sword slaying god. Fortunately, his reaction was fast, or else he would have been tricked by her. He suddenly appeared in front of Li Yuehua, wanting to injure her before she could use the enlightened master descends. This was not the deity king's palace. Without external help, he would not be restrained. Moreover, his cultivation level had increased, so he could fight. Li Yuehua saw Chu Li's face and was slightly stunned. Then, she flashed and appeared 20 feet away. Chu Li appeared right behind her and struck with his palm. Li Yuehua frowned. Although they looked different, he was using the Azura power technique. Moreover, his cultivation level was so high and he was still killing Azuras. It must be Chu Li. However, what shocked her was that Chu Li's cultivation level had increased greatly. Since she was not in the deity king's palace, she did not have the confidence to win, so she could only use the enlightened master descends. Thinking about this, she no longer hesitated. She formed a seal with her hands and was about to use the enlightened master descends. When Chu Li saw this, he pushed his body movement technique to its limit and suddenly appeared in front of her. Then, he pointed his 10 fingers and activated the Azura power technique. The flying star finger energy turned into finger energy that swept across the sky and formed a dense net. Li Yuehua frowned and glared at him. A cold light flashed in her eyes. Facing the approaching Chu Li, she straightened her palm and used it as a blade. A blade energy shot across the sky like a rainbow piercing through the sun, heading straight for Chu Li. It was like a long blade slashing down. Chu Li did not dodge. He reached out with his left palm and shot out with his right hand to disrupt Li Yuehua from using the enlightened master descends. Bang! The blade energy collided with Chu Li's bloody divine claw and a thunderous sound was heard. After Chu Li took a step back, he took 2 steps in the air and pressed forward again. Li Yuehua took the opportunity when he retreated and looked up at the sky. Suddenly, a ray of light descended from the sky and landed on top of her head. Chu Li frowned. He did not expect Li Yuehua to use the enlightened master descends so quickly. He moved forward and spread his fingers. Bang! Li Yuehua swung her sleeves and hit him 10 meters away. Chu Li felt a strong force in her sleeves and immediately knew that the situation was over. All he needed to do was to escape. He immediately disappeared without a trace. Li Yuehua was not in a hurry to chase after him. Her white robe fluttered in the wind as she calmly looked down at the city under the moonlight. Her eyes were calm and emotionless. Then, she disappeared without a sound and blended into the void. Chu Li appeared in one of the residences in Tianhua City and let out a long sigh of relief. Then, he disappeared once again and moved to another location. Bang! Suddenly, a hand reached out from behind and lightly hit his back. Chapter 23:13. Chu Li felt as if his entire body was falling apart. All his strength was dispersed by this palm strike, and he could not exert any strength at all. He tried his best to shift the void and instantly arrived inside a stone tower. Then, in the next moment, he disappeared again. Li Yuehua appeared outside the stone tower and frowned as she looked at the tower. She did not find any trace of Chu Li, and she had lost her sense of him. He was isolated by the stone tower. Clearly, this was Chu Li's last move. Boom! A loud sound was heard as Li Yuehua slammed her palm on the stone tower, trying to shatter it. However, the stone tower trembled, but it did not shatter. Li Yuehua frowned and lightly slammed her palm again. Boom! In the loud sound, the stone tower trembled again, but it still did not shatter. Li Yuehua frowned even more, but her eyes were still cold and ruthless. She carefully sized up the stone tower. Without this stone tower, Chu Li would definitely not be able to escape. This stone tower also isolated Chu Li's aura. If she wanted to track Chu Li, she would have to destroy this stone tower. She did not believe it and slammed her palm again. Rumble! The deafening echoes rang out incessantly. The stone tower made a loud sound like a copper bell. The sound lingered in the air, but through the vibration, it dissipated the pure and sharp palm energy. Li Yuehua stared at the stone tower motionlessly, feeling more and more strange. With the strength of her palm, even iron and stone would shatter with a single strike. However, this stone pagoda made of bluestone looked very rough and shouldn't be able to withstand her strength at all. Yet, she couldn't break it. This seriously challenged her dignity as an enlightened master. If Chu Li escaped, she would not be able to deal with this rough stone tower. She would be too useless. When did such a hard thing exist in the lower realm? In anger, she took a deep breath. Her white robe fluttered as if she was in a strong wind, and then she slowly slammed the stone tower. Boom! After an earth-shattering sound, the stone tower still trembled for a while before returning to silence as if nothing had happened. Li Yuehua snorted in disbelief. Her jade-like palm became crystal clear, from a piece of sheep-fat white jade to a piece of crystal. She lightly pressed it against the stone tower, and then there was a muffled bang. Li Yuehua only felt a strange force passing through her palm, and a flash of lightning directly attacked her mind. Boom! A thunderbolt exploded in her mind. She became dizzy and lost contact with the outside world. When she woke up, she found a hand pressing on her towering chest. 5 fingers spread out, emitting a cold aura. Her fingertips had already clawed through the protective energy barrier and reached her body. However, under the descent of the Empyrean, Li Yuehua's current body was no longer her original body. Instead, it was a divine body that had been penetrated by the power of the Empyrean. Chu Li's divine blood claw was invincible, but when it came into contact with her soft skin, it was as if it had been blocked by a flexible sheet of iron. His claws were slippery and could not penetrate her skin at all. Li Yuehua snorted angrily. Her originally emotionless eyes suddenly emitted a cold glint that was almost tangible as it shot towards Chu Li. Suddenly, she felt a sharp pain in her head. The blue light in Chu Li's eyes were like 2 bolts of lightning. Her body trembled, and when she regained her senses, Chu Li had already disappeared. Li Yuehua took 2 steps back and looked at the strange stone tower in front of her with a serious expression. Her face was pale without a trace of blood, and her head was still aching. She felt that her soul had been severely injured by an invisible force, and her soul had also been injured by the lightning. The heavenly gods used their godly souls to descend. Now that her godly soul was damaged, she couldn't use all her techniques. More importantly, after her godly soul was damaged, she would need a longer lifespan to return to the upper heaven. Originally, she would have taken 1,000 years of Li Yuehua's lifespan. Now that her soul was injured, she would need at least 1,500 years of lifespan. The time she could descend was limited. She could not exceed an hour. Once she exceeded that, she would take Li Yuehua's life and her body would collapse. Therefore, she could not heal her soul, so she could only use her lifespan to make up for it. Thinking of this, she hated Chu Li even more. She felt that he was a stubborn bug that needed to be stomped to death. The stone tower in front of her was the key. Only by destroying the stone tower could Chu Li be killed. As long as the stone tower was there, Chu Li could escape. She could not do anything to him. Li Yuehua took a deep breath. Ignoring the faint pain in her head, she waved her palms as if she was dancing. A bright light flashed in the sky and landed on her palms like snowflakes. Her palms, which were originally transparent like crystals, suddenly shone brightly and shot toward the stone tower. Bang! The stone pagoda shook violently with a loud bang. Chu suddenly appeared on top of the tower. His eyes flashed blue and he shot out the god-punishing thunder sword again. He had already noticed that Li Yuehua's soul was injured. It was a good opportunity for the god-punishing thunder sword. Moreover, he was in the 9 towers, so the energy of his soul was endless. The god-punishing thunder sword condensed and shot out. Bam 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 bam! Li Yuehua fluttered backwards amidst a series of muffled sounds. Her jade face, which had been calm all this while, turned cold. She did not expect this day to come. She was forced to this step by a person from the lower realm. It was a great humiliation. She had to kill him. However, her head was splitting and she had nowhere to vent her anger. She could only keep retreating to ease the opponent's attack. She was ready to find a chance to injure Chu. She did not believe that Chu would keep using this strange skill. However, Chu ruined her plan. He kept using the god-punishing thunder sword, pressuring Li Yuehua to the point that she could not breathe. Her face became paler and paler. She bit her red lips so hard that it almost bled. She looked pitiful. However, Chu did not feel any pity. He desperately urged the god-punishing thunder sword to destroy her and the divine lady. Li Yuehua's head was splitting. Looking at Chu Li's almost endless crazy attack, she suddenly wanted to leave and disappeared. Although Chu Li wanted to chase after her and take the opportunity to get rid of her, he lost track of her and could not track her. Bang! A loud bang was heard. Chu Li turned his head and saw that the stone tower had exploded. Chu Li's expression changed. The 9 pagodas were connected, and it was a powerful formation that could isolate the void and form a world of its own. He could change his position between the 9 pagodas at will, and he didn't need to use void shift. He could move at will, and it was easy and fast, far better than using void shift. Not only that, he could quickly recover from his injuries in the 9 towers and reach the peak. His soul energy was endless. More importantly, he could hide in the tower. Li Yuehua sneered and stood in the void. She curled her lips and stared at him coldly. Her eyes were still shooting out cold light. Just as Chu Li was about to move, he felt a pain in his back and flew out. Bang 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 bang! His back was hit hard. A tyrannical force was tearing at him. He tried his best to suppress it but could not. His body was about to be torn apart. Ah! Chu Li roared. He moved the heavenly demonic orb and the heavenly demonic scripture. His body was instantly strengthened. Li Yuehua suddenly stopped and waved her hand. Chu Li spat out blood and fell at her feet. She looked down at Chu Li and frowned. The heavenly demonic power? Chu Li had used the heavenly demonic spirit devouring technique to absorb all the tyrannical force into the heavenly demonic orb. Then, the heavenly demonic orb went into hiding again. Li Yuehua frowned and stared at him. She thought she was seeing things. The heavenly demonic power and the Asura power technique could not coexist. If Chu Li had really cultivated the heavenly demonic power, it would be a great surprise. Chapter 23:14. Everyone knew that cultivating the heavenly demonic power and the Asura power technique could completely kill Asuras, but they did not know the mystery behind it. They only thought that it was a devastating blow to Asuras, but they did not know that it was a way for Asuras to strengthen themselves. The Asura power technique and the heavenly demonic power combined could both destroy Asuras and strengthen it. Male Asuras were destroyed while female Asuras were strengthened. Chu Li slowly raised his head and said with difficulty, as expected of an enlightened master, "Are you from the upper heaven? You know quite a lot." Li Yuehua looked at him coldly and quietly. Chu Li said, "Yes, I've cultivated the heavenly demonic power." "Are you from the heavenly demonic realm?" Li Yuehua asked. Chu Li sighed, yes. Li Yuehua said calmly, impossible. Chu Li's cultivation level was extremely high and he was a disciple of the Rain Master Palace. If he was a heavenly demon, he would not be able to pass the Rain Master Palace. The Rain Master Palace was not a place where heavenly demons could enter. No matter how weak it was still one of the 9 divisions. Chu Li smiled. I have my ways. What does the upper realm look like? What it looks like is none of your business. You can't go in. Li Yuehua said. Chu Li said, I've cultivated to the 9th level of the Azura power technique. It's not impossible for me to cultivate to the 10th level. I'll be able to perfect it and ascend to become an Azura. We might even meet in the upper heaven. Li Yuehua smiled. You're thinking too much. It would be strange if the 10th level was that easy. Just die. Chu Li quickly said, Wait. Li Yuehua's palm stopped in midair and looked at him. Don't think about stalling for time. You'll definitely die. Chu Li sighed and said, I'd like to ask, how can I pass the hurdle of the 10th level? It's hard to explain. Li Yuehua shook her head. Chu Li said, Based on what I know, one is to strengthen your cultivation level and the other is to understand the Azura Divine Sigil. You'll naturally enter the 10th level, right? That's just a joke. Li Yuehua said, Don't even think about it. If it was that easy, it wouldn't be so rare. Nobody knows how to enter the 10th level. Everyone has their own path. Chu Li frowned at her. Li Yuehua lightly said, I don't need to deceive someone who is destined to die. Over the past 10,000 years, there have been many who have cultivated to the 9th level, but only a few have been able to step into the 10th level. It all depends on the will of the heavens. Unfortunately, you are not a person favored by the will of the heavens. Go. As soon as she finished speaking, she struck Chu Li's chest with her palm. Chu Li smiled at her and suddenly disappeared. Li Yuehua struck out with her palm, but it was empty. Chu Li was nowhere to be seen. She swept her gaze around, but there was still no trace of him. She could not sense anything either. It was as if Chu Li had completely disappeared from the world, and was completely dead. She knew that this must have been caused by Chu Li's treasure, and she was extremely furious. She crossed her legs and sat on the ground. She could not care less about the dirt as her slender hands formed a strange mudra in front of her chest. She wanted to find Chu Li's hiding spot through her derivation technique. Then, her face turned deathly pale. She opened her eyes, and they became dim and lifeless. As her soul was injured, it was extremely difficult for her to perform the derivation technique, and its power was greatly reduced. It was blurry and difficult to see clearly. Indeed, she could not derive Chu Li's location. It was as if he had already left. She scanned her surroundings unwillingly. Her intuition told her that Chu Li was still nearby and that he was laughing at her. However, she could not find him no matter how hard she tried. As an enlightened master, she was extremely furious, and her desire to kill Chu Li was boiling. Kaboom! She pressed her palm lightly, and the stone tower nearby exploded again. It completely disappeared, and the stones turned into powder. She frowned and walked to the pile of stone powder. She looked at the stones and waved her hand to summon a stone. She examined it carefully and found that there were strange patterns carved on the stone. She concentrated and thought about it, but she could not understand it. This stone tower was indeed a formation, but it had been destroyed by her. How could it still hide Chu Li's figure? She pondered for a moment and stepped into the void. 2 beams of light shot out from her eyes as she looked around. Soon, her figure flashed and she entered a forest. In the forest, she saw another stone tower, which was exactly the same as the previous one. She could not help but laugh coldly. The aura of this stone tower was dim and unclear, and it was faintly discernible. It was obvious that it was still in the formation. She immediately understood that she had destroyed a stone tower, but she had only damaged the formation for a short while. Now that the stone tower had resumed its operation, She did not manage to destroy it completely, and that was why Chu Li had escaped. She only felt that Chu Li was too stubborn. The more she wanted to stomp him to death, the more she could not. His stubborn vitality made her even more furious, and she wanted to kill him even more. She wanted to kill him with a single palm strike. She levitated and stepped into the void, and once again flew over the entire city. Soon, she found 12 stone towers. These stone towers looked almost the same, and it was obvious that these stone towers had formed a formation. She arrived in front of one of the stone towers, and her palms turned crystal clear like ice. She waved her palms gracefully, and then a bright light fell from the sky. It entered her palms, and after it shone brightly, it turned into a beam of light and shot towards the stone tower. Kaboom! The stone tower shook like a muffled thunder, but it did not shatter. She continued to wave her palms, and another bright light shot towards the stone tower. Kaboom! Kaboom! After 3 consecutive palm strikes, the stone tower exploded, and she smiled. Sure enough, she had to use her trump card to destroy this stone tower. The people from the lower realm were not much, but formations were not to be underestimated. Once she returned, she would have to study the art of formations, or else she would be at a disadvantage. Then, she flew to the front of another stone tower, and once again used 4 palm strikes to shatter the stone tower, destroying the formation. Every time she shattered a stone tower, she would focus and sense it. She did not believe that Chu Li could hide in one of them. Back then, Chu Li had built a total of 13 pagodas to prevent anyone from destroying the stone pagodas. As long as there were 9 pagodas, the formation could be connected. As long as there were 9 pagodas left, the formation would not be destroyed. When his opponent destroyed the stone towers, he could also escape. This was his habit of being cautious and leaving a way out, and he rarely used it. Often, he could use all kinds of strange skills to turn the situation around, and he did not expect to finally use it this time. By the time Li Yuehua destroyed all the stone towers, Chu Li had already disappeared. Time did not allow her to dawdle anymore, so she could only return to the Deity King Palace, extract 1,500 years of her lifespan, and return to the upper heaven. In the Deity King Palace, the cold light in Li Yuehua's eyes disappeared, and her original coldness turned into calmness. Her body was weak, but there was endless energy flowing into her body. The power of the Azura Deity King statue was repairing her weakness. Ha ha! A burst of hearty laughter could be heard. Chu Li glided across the white jade floor and entered the basilica. He smiled at Li Yuehua. Goddess, I wonder if I can continuously summon enlightened masters to descend to the mortal world? He stood in front of the deity king statue with his hands behind his back, and looked at the statue. He felt that he was too hasty the last time, and it was possible that his Azura deity king level 10 depended on this statue. Chapter 23:15. Li Yuehua turned to look at Chu Li. Her eyes were as calm as water. Chu Li. Chu Li smiled with his hands behind his back. I want to perfect my Azura power technique and enter the 10th level. Is there any way? No. Li Yuehua replied. I've told you before that everyone has their own path. It's impossible to enter the 10th level through normal means. You've killed too many Azuras. It's even more impossible for you to become an Azura deity king. Chu Li smiled. That might not be the case. Killing Azuras or not has nothing to do with perfecting it. In fact, the more Azuras I kill, the faster I can perfect my Azura power technique. He was sure that Li Yuehua was still conscious when she was in the state of Avatar. That was scary enough. Li Yuehua in the Avatar state not only had a strong cultivation level, but more importantly, her martial arts were exquisite. She also had some unique skills that were not available in the lower realm. After being possessed, she personally experienced the use of the unique martial art. Her cultivation method was different from others. In addition to Li Yuehua's exceptional talent, she would definitely improve by leaps and bounds. Every time an avatar descends, she could obtain a unique skill or even more. Although she lost 1,000 years of lifespan, she could be compensated. Moreover, Li Yuehua might have absorbed the longevity technique. Being an avatar was a rare opportunity. Ridiculous. Li Yuehua frowned. Chu Li stared at her with the omniscient mirror. He wanted to find a flaw or clue. What he wanted to do most now was to cultivate the Azura power technique to the 10th level. He believed that only then would he reach the peak. His other skills would also improve by leaps and bounds. That was the only way to go against Song Wuji. Otherwise, he would just be courting death. If he could be like the Divine Lady and invite the Avatar to descend, it would be another way. However, he was reluctant to use the Avatar's power to defeat his enemy. He wanted to use his own strength to defeat Song Wuji. Killing Song Wuji was not just for revenge. He had promised the spirit beast and helped Fu Kaiwei. There was no way he could go back on his words. Li Yuehua was at her weakest right now, but he was still trying to stall for time because he wanted to obtain the 10th stage of the Azura power technique. Regardless of whether she was telling the truth or not, she would still reveal a clue, and this clue was better than not knowing anything at all. When he saw Li Yuehua's eyebrows furrow, he instantly felt that he had hit the nail on Li Yuehua's head. Smiling, he said, "Killing Azuras is beneficial to my comprehension of the Azura divine rune, so the more Azuras I kill, the deeper my comprehension of the Azura divine rune will be. If I can kill everyone in the Azura realm, I'm sure I'll be able to step into perfection." Ridiculous, Li Yuehua said coldly. Chu Li shook his head and smiled. "I'd like to try. I wonder if the Divine Lady has an immortal body? It won't be that easy for you to kill me," Li Yuehua said indifferently. "Even though I'm weak now, I'm not someone you can kill." Chu Li suddenly felt a heavy pressure on his face, as if a mountain was pressing down on his head. He involuntarily floated to the ground, stepping on the white jade stone. A strange energy drilled into the sole of his feet and into his body, interfering with the circulation of his inner energy. Instantly, the air around him became difficult to understand. Other than the top of his head and the bottom of his feet, the air around him also changed. The air seemed to have become sticky, and every breath he took was difficult. It was as if he had sunk into a swamp, sinking deeper and deeper, leaving him powerless to struggle. Chu Li frowned as he looked at Li Yuehua. In a flash, he appeared in front of Li Yuehua and formed his hand into a claw. Li Yuehua lightly swayed, dodging the claw. Her movement technique was light and strangely fast. Although it looked slow, it was as if she was using the shrinking earth technique. Chu Li knew that she was borrowing the power of the Azura deity king statue. Furthermore, this deity king palace was strange. There was a huge formation that formed a unique area. Coming here, it was as if he was trapped in the formation. Naturally, his hands and feet were tied, and he couldn't unleash half of his power. If he wanted to kill Li Yuehua, he would have to force her out. Unfortunately, Li Yuehua was smart and would never step out of the deity king palace. It would be difficult for him to kill Li Yuehua here, but this was a rare opportunity, and he didn't want to let it go. TSS, 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 TSS. He turned his claw into fingers and moved his 5 fingers. 5 meteor fingers shot out. Following that, his fingers moved continuously. Finger energies shot out one after another, forming a dense net that enveloped Li Yuehua. Li Yuehua stood still and waved her palms gracefully. Suddenly, a ray of light fell and stopped on her palms. Then, it spread out and met the finger energies. The sharp finger energies were instantly dispersed. Chu Li scoffed. He had already activated the sacrificial divine power and used all his strength, but he realized that he couldn't do anything to Li Yuehua. Li Yuehua was in a weakened state. Chu Li had already far surpassed his previous state by killing Azuras, but he still couldn't kill Li Yuehua. This made him extremely unhappy, as if he was doing something useless. Although Li Yuehua was borrowing the help of the deity King Palace, or else she would have been killed by him, it was understandable. He couldn't control the deity King Palace, so he could only sulk. Suddenly, a clear whistle was heard. Chu Li's expression changed. When he heard this whistle, he felt a sense of familiarity. It was Sui Miaozhu. Li Yuehua's spirits lifted and her expression became calmer. She said, "Lord Sui has come out of isolation. If you don't leave, I'm afraid you won't be able to." Chu Li scoffed. "So what if Lord Sui has come out of isolation? Can she enter the 10th level?" "Not necessarily," Li Yuehua said. As they spoke, they were still fighting. Li Yuehua had been defending herself. She looked like she was in imminent danger, but since she was in the deity King Palace, she could use the power of the deity King statue to barely hold on, so she didn't get killed immediately. In fact, she was secretly excited. After an enlightened master descended, she would instantly feel weak. However, this feeling of weakness was quickly expelled by the power of the deity King statue. Although she looked weak, she was actually accumulating her strength to kill Chu Li. She saw Chu Li as the biggest threat to the Azura boundary, even more so than Song Wuji. Although Song Wuji was strong, he was restricted by the rules and would not come to the Azura boundary to massacre people. However, Chu Li did not care and killed the Azura boundary. This greatly weakened the Azura boundary's strength, and they might really lose to the Grandmaster. Although she lost 1,500 years of life, her cultivation level did not decrease but increased. This was one of the benefits of an enlightened master's descent. When an enlightened master left her body, she used the power of the deity King statue to recover quickly. Her cultivation level was even higher than before. However, she purposely pretended to be weak to lure Chu Li and kill him. This time, she would completely destroy him. Chu Li's expression suddenly changed. Sui Miaozhu had already appeared in the deity King Palace. She stood in the void and looked at him. Her gaze was cold and the aura around her seemed to be one with heaven and earth. The power of heaven and earth was her power. Chu Li felt a huge pressure as if she had turned into a towering mountain that could crush him at any time. He could not help but want to escape. He was very surprised that Sui Miaozhu's martial arts had improved to such a level. "Divine Lady, should we kill him?" Sui Miaozhu said. "Kill." Li Yuehua spat out a single word. The two suddenly disappeared and appeared in front of and behind Chu Li. Their palms hit his heart at the same time. His heart exploded, then his dantian. Chu Li could not see them clearly and could not avoid them. Chapter 23:16. Just as the two palms touched his body and were about to attack, their palms suddenly felt empty. It was as if all the palm energy had hit nothing but air. Chu Li was still standing in front of them, which shocked them. Chu Li seemed to have changed into another person as his body grew taller. They retracted their palms and attacked again. The next moment Chu Li disappeared. Li Yuehua's expression changed. Sui Miaozhu frowned too, as she did not expect Chu Li to escape from the ruler of God's palace. "Oh no!" Li Yuehua said. Sui Miaozhu said, "Divine Lady, he can't escape." Then, she flew into the air and stared at Chu Li. The surroundings were empty and Chu Li was nowhere to be seen. Confused, she turned to Li Yuehua. "Divine Lady, how did he run so fast when he can't shift the void?" "He has a technique and a treasure," Li Yuehua said slowly. She sat on the ground and started forming a seal with her hands, ready to use the prediction technique to sense Chu Li. Sui Miaozhu did not disturb her when she saw her like this. Instead, she circled around the periphery of the ruler of God's palace, going further and further away. She did not believe that Chu Li could run so far. More importantly, Chu Li's heart had been crushed into mush. Even an Azura would die. Moreover, he was not an Azura, so he would definitely die. Where could a person who was bound to die run to? He might have died within a mile of the ruler of God's palace. If he was running for his life, he would have died even faster. After searching for a while, Sui Miaozhu returned to the ruler of God's palace and saw Li Yuehua's gloomy face as she slowly retracted her hand seal. Her eyes flashed coldly as she asked, "Divine Lady, did you find him?" "No." Li Yuehua shook her head. "He has a treasure that can hide him from the heavenly prediction technique. Let's see if there are any stone pagodas around." "Stone pagodas?" Sui Miaozhu looked at her in confusion. Li Yuehua scoffed. "He used the stone pagodas to hide himself and shift the void. It's a mysterious formation. Let's go take a look." The two women found 2 stone pagodas on the other side of the ruler of God's city and continued searching. However, they did not find anything else, so they destroyed the pagodas. It was easy for the 2 women to destroy the pagodas together. After the stone pagoda was destroyed, Li Yuehua once again formed hand seals and sat down to operate the heavenly secrets divination. After a long while, she opened her eyes and shook her head. "He escaped," Li Yuehua said in a low voice. "Did he enter the extraterritorial battlefield?" Sui Miaozhu frowned and said, "I'll go after him." "It might not be the extraterritorial battlefield." Li Yuehua shook her head. "It could be the heavenly demon realm." "He's a heavenly demon." Sui Miaozhu was surprised. Li Yuehua said, "No one expected this, right?" "He's a skyfiend, but he managed to cultivate the Azura power technique to the 9th level. He's a genius. Heavenly demons can't cultivate the Azura power technique, right?" Sui Miaozhu asked in confusion. "How can he cultivate it?" "This is a genius," Li Yuehua said. "Capable people can do what others can't. If we can harvest his cultivation, it will be of great help. It's a pity that this person is too dangerous. If we get greedy, he will definitely take advantage of the situation and fall." "Yes." Sui Miaozhu nodded lightly. She had personally experienced Chu Li's prowess. Not only was his cultivation level profound, but more importantly, he was cunning and difficult to deal with. It was impossible to guard against him. She had to kill him as soon as she had the chance. Otherwise, there would be endless trouble. Li Yuehua looked at her. Sui Miaozhu's cold face showed a hint of a smile. "This time, I've learned more and improved faster. If I meet Chu Li, I should be able to kill him." "It'll be difficult." Li Yuehua shook her head. Sui Miaozhu frowned. Li Yuehua said, "Just now we were here, and I used a trick to make him lower his guard. If we go outside, you won't be able to catch him. He's in great danger now. Every time he kills an Azura, his cultivation will increase. We must kill him as soon as possible." Sui Miaozhu's face was solemn. Li Yuehua sighed. "You're the only one left among the 4 great reverends. Come with me." She shook her head and turned around to leave. Although Sui Miaozhu had a high position, the Divine Lady's position was higher. She followed Sui Miaozhu into the Deity King Palace. Li Yuehua said, "I think you can become the Deity King. Let's see if the Deity King's statue recognizes you. Since the Azura boundary, it has always been the males who become the Deity King. I don't know if the females can become the Deity King." Sui Miaozhu closed fist saluted. "Thank you, Divine Lady." Li Yuehua shook her head. "There's no need to thank me. Heroes are created by the times. Everything is up to fate. It all depends on whether you have the fate of becoming the Deity King." As she finished speaking, she walked to the front of the female Azura statue and pressed her palms on the statue's palms. She did not move an inch. Her body emitted a blurry white light that grew brighter and brighter. It was as if a bright moon had fallen on her. After a while, all the white lights suddenly converged and entered the statue. There was a flash of light from the statue. Then, its eyes shot out a blurry white light that enveloped Sui Miaozhu. Sui Miaozhu's white robe fluttered in the wind. She slowly rose up as if she was riding the wind. She closed her eyes and allowed the gaze of the goddess king statue to envelop her. After a while, a red mist floated out of her body. It was blurry like a veil. It was different from the blood fiend, but it seemed to be related to it. Li Yuehua took 2 steps back and stood at the side, watching Sui Miaozhu. Sui Miaozhu changed under the gaze of the goddess king statue. Her skin was like jade. It was as if all the color of blood had faded away. She turned into a white jade statue. Her gaze was devoid of the smoke and fire. She was like a fairy who did not eat the food of the mortal world. Li Yuehua smiled. These changes made her heave a sigh of relief. She did not expect Sui Miaozhu to really have the fate of becoming a deity king. Based on these changes, she was transforming into a deity king. Slowly, the red mist on Sui Miaozhu's body dissipated. It was as if her physique had completely transformed. Her entire body was like a flawless white jade. No one would have any thoughts of blasphemy. They could only look at her from afar. Her eyes were clear and spirited. She could see through a person's heart with just a glance. Nothing could hide from her. The goddess king statue's gaze suddenly brightened. Its bright gaze suddenly drilled into Sui Miaozhu's forehead. A red mole appeared on Sui Miaozhu's forehead. It was bright red like cinnabar. After adding this red mole to her originally beautiful face, she suddenly became more solemn. No one dared to look at her directly. She exuded an awe-inspiring aura. She suddenly let out a clear cry. It sounded like a crane's cry. This cry resounded in the minds of all the Asuras within the Asura realm. Their bodies instantly trembled. Their cultivation inexplicably increased by a large margin. They were overjoyed. They instantly understood that the Asura deity king had finally appeared. Li Yuehua smiled like a flower. She smiled sweetly. "Congratulations, deity king." Sui Miaozhu smiled brightly. She fist saluted. "Thank you, goddess." Li Yuehua shook her head. "This is the Asura realm's choice. It's not my doing. Since the deity king has appeared, the Asura realm's fate is sealed." Sui Miaozhu smiled and shook her head. "The 4 venerable lords are still undecided. Goddess, what advice do you have?" "I will not be involved in these matters. The deity king will make the decision." Li Yuehua shook her head. "But Chu Li is a great threat. If he cannot be eliminated, the Asura realm will not be at peace. I will personally eliminate him." Sui Miaozhu nodded. She was no longer as cold as before. Her aura was calm and calm. She was warm like the spring breeze. However, she was also dignified. No one dared to be rude. Chapter 23:17. Li Yuehua revealed a trace of a smile. "If it was in the past, it would be very difficult for you to kill him. Chu Li is truly difficult to deal with, but it is different now. You have already become an Asura deity king, and Chu Li has cultivated the Asura power technique, and has even reached the 9th level. It is truly a piece of cake." "Can he reach the 10th level?" Sui Miaozhu smiled sweetly and shook her head. "If he can really reach the 10th level, then it is not good to kill him. If he can achieve perfection, it will be of great benefit to us. If a cultivator of the Asura power technique stage 10 were to appear in the Asura realm and ascend to the upper heaven, the entire Asura realm would benefit. Endless power would descend and increase the cultivation of the Asuras, saving all the Asuras 100 years of effort. This was a qualitative improvement for the Asura realm, especially for those Asuras who were stuck at a bottleneck. This improvement was an opportunity to break through the bottleneck and step into another realm. Li Yuehua said lightly, "It's rare to be able to reach the 9th level, but reaching the 10th level is not something that can be achieved through comprehension and hard work. It needs enough luck and opportunity, and no one can say for sure. But before he can reach the 10th level, more than half of us Asura will be slaughtered by him, and our strength will be greatly reduced. At that time, the celestial beings will take advantage of the situation and hit us when we are down. It will not be easy for us Azura realm to make a comeback. Understood. Sui Miaozhu said softly, he must die. The sooner, the better. Li Yuehua said. He's killing Azuras at every moment, weakening our strength. Now that we don't have the 4 great supremacies, our strength has been greatly reduced. Even if you, the Divine King, appear, you won't be able to make up for it. Sui Miaozhu said, I'll find him right now. Li Yuehua smiled and nodded. This time, Chu Li would not be able to escape. The appearance of the Azura deity king meant that Chu Li's death was certain. As long as he cultivated the Azura power technique, he would not be able to escape the senses of the new deity king, Sui Miaozhu. Once she sensed him, it would not be difficult for her to kill him. The Azura deity king was the king of all Azuras. He had the unquestionable right to decide. He didn't even need to lift a finger. He could just use the power of the Azura deity king to directly deprive and suppress the Azura power technique. All the Azura power techniques that came close to her were like mice encountering a cat, losing all their might. Chu Li suddenly disappeared and reappeared inside a stone tower. He let out a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he had already built the stone towers outside the city of Divine Kings in advance. Not only did he build 9, but a total of 20 stone towers. Even if Li Yuehua destroyed one of them, it would be difficult to destroy all 9 towers in a short period of time. As long as he had the 9 pagodas, he would be able to move freely and escape far away in a flash. He sat in the pagoda and activated the life and death scripture. Instantly, he aged rapidly and died. The aura of the entire chakra pagoda became dark and unpredictable. It was as if it was hidden between heaven and earth, completely extinguished along with him. About 2 hours later, Chu Li slowly woke up. His entire body looked brand new, as if he had been reborn. His heart had regained its strength, and his vitality was stronger than before. The world in front of him had once again become fresh and moving. Every time he died, he gained a deeper understanding of this world, and his understanding of the Azura divine tattoo deepened. He suddenly discovered that not only were the Azura divine tattoo not evil, it was instead incomparably beautiful, exuding a strange kind of beauty. He squinted his eyes and felt the changes in his body. It was no different from before, and because his heart was reborn, it was stronger. Hence, his cultivation level had also increased, becoming stronger than before. He recalled the scene earlier where he was almost crippled of his cultivation level, but he had a lot of energy. Even if his dantian was destroyed, he was not afraid. However, the speed of the 2 women made his heart palpitate. If he had not decisively used the heavenly demonic spirit devouring technique, he would have fallen into their hands. He would be in a dilemma of life and death. Li Yuehua might have taken away his cultivation level and turned it into a spirit medicine for her to increase her cultivation level. To him, this was a great humiliation. Fortunately, he had a backup plan, which allowed him to escape in time. Every time he encountered Li Yuehua, he would always be at a disadvantage. This divine lady was indeed extraordinary and not easy to deal with. This, on the other hand, made him excited and eager to fight. He had to eliminate her. If he could kill the divine lady, the Azura boundary would definitely be heavily injured. He felt that the ruler of God's Hall was extremely important to the Azura boundary. If it was damaged, it would have a huge impact. Hence, he had always been restless, but unfortunately, he could not get what he wanted. Now that Sui Miaozhu had come out of seclusion and her cultivation level had increased, killing the divine lady was becoming more and more difficult. His cultivation level had increased, but so had Sui Miaozhu. The ship rose with the tide, but he still did not have much of an advantage over Sui Miaozhu. If he wanted to kill her, he would have to put in a lot of effort. But even if he had to put in a lot of effort, he had to kill her. It was such a delightful thing to kill the 4 supremacies, how could he miss one? Suddenly, he felt a strange energy shrouding him. Although it could not break the 9 pagodas formation, it could faintly sense him. This wave was extremely strange, faintly discernible, yet incomparably clear. He immediately knew that someone had sensed his position, and that danger was approaching. At this moment, the person who sensed him was definitely not a friend, but an enemy. It could be that Li Yuehua had used the deity descending technique, or it could be a top-notch expert. He had exposed himself, and it was extremely dangerous. Just as he was about to move, a loud rumble echoed in his ears. Rumble! His surroundings shook and the wheel pagoda collapsed. He wanted to leave, but he was restrained by an invisible force, so he could not leave. He turned to look at Sui Miaozhu, who was standing in the void. Using the omniscient mirror, he could only see Sui Miaozhu in the void, but Li Yuehua was nowhere to be seen. Although this place was tens of thousands of miles away from the deity king's palace, it would only take one shift for Li Yuehua, so why was she nowhere to be seen? Even though Sui Miaozhu's cultivation level had improved greatly, it was still very risky for her to look for him alone. Logically speaking, Li Yuehua should have teamed up with him, but could it be that Li Yuehua was injured and could not fight? However, he immediately felt that Sui Miaozhu was different. He glided into the void and carefully looked at Sui Miaozhu, saying, "Something's not right." Sui Miaozhu smiled and looked at him quietly. "Don't you know that I've become an Azura deity king?" "Impossible," Chu Li said. "All Azura deity kings are male Azuras." "There's a first time for everything," Sui Miaozhu said. "I still have to thank you." Chu Li frowned at her. Sui Miaozhu said, "If you hadn't killed the other 3 supreme lords, the position of deity king might not have fallen into my hands, so I have to thank you. I'll let you die in one piece." Then, she chuckled and said, "Die." Chu Li felt his body tense up, then his inner energy boiled, as if it was about to cook him. His meridians burst and his organs were injured. The Azura power technique's inner energy was completely out of control. Not only did it not nourish his body, but it also attacked him desperately. Chu Li's expression changed. Sui Miaozhu said calmly, "This is the power of an Azura deity king. All the Azura power technique respects me as the king and is under my control. Your life and death are also in my hand. You can recover from a shattered heart, but let's see if you can recover from a shattered organ." Her eyes suddenly lit up. The Azura power technique in Chu Li's body instantly became a few times more violent. It was about to destroy his organs. Chu Li hurriedly activated the life and death scripture, and in an instant, the Azura power technique disappeared and turned into the cloud slashing power. Just as he was about to disappear, he realized that the void was locked, just like when he was in an extraterrestrial battlefield. Chapter 23:18. Chu Li frowned. Sui Miaozhu smiled. "Are you trying to escape?" Chu Li replied, "What a great Azura deity king! How did you become a deity king?" "Why can't I?" Sui Miaozhu stopped smiling. "Female Azuras are not inferior to male Azuras." Chu Li shook his head. "If female Azuras don't enter the foreign battlefields and don't participate in killing, how can they become deity kings without any merits?" Sui Miaozhu chuckled and shook her head. "You might be mistaken. Everyone is mistaken. We, Azura, are not entering the extraterritorial battlefield for merits or to kill celestials. We are here for cultivation." Chu Li asked, "Do we have to kill celestials to cultivate?" "This is the cultivation method for male Azuras. It's the fastest way to progress." Sui Miaozhu shook her head. "We have no choice. If we don't kill celestials, we won't have a deep understanding of the Azura power technique, and we won't be able to progress as quickly. That's why celestials have to suffer." Chu Li frowned. "What about female Azuras? They don't need to kill celestials to progress?" Sui Miaozhu chuckled and said, "The improvement of female Asuras relies on releasing their instincts and understanding their nature, just like the cultivation of the Buddhist sex in the limitless surpassing state. As long as they understand their nature, they will naturally be able to improve." Chu Li nodded slowly. He knew that male Asuras entered the foreign battlefields to cultivate, but he did not know that this was the cultivation method of female Asuras. He sized up Sui Miaozhu and said, "In that case, you didn't kill too many celestial beings? Isn't it better to leave them for male Asuras to kill? There aren't many celestials who enter the foreign battlefields. They're rare." Sui Miaozhu smiled. "But I have to kill a scourge like you. Chu Li, what's the point of delaying? If I swear not to come to the Asura realm, you won't let me go?" Chu Li asked. "You've killed too many Asuras. You'll definitely die." Sui Miaozhu sighed. "A genius like you is rare in this world. It's such a shame." Chu Li asked, "Aren't you afraid that Song Wuji will come and kill you if you kill me?" Sui Miaozhu laughed and shook her head. "Do you think Song Wuji would dare to come to the Asura realm? Even if I can't enter the Asura realm, what about the extraterritorial battlefield?" Chu Li said faintly, "If he makes a move and sweeps through the foreign battlefields, you Asura aren't that strong. You'll definitely die. Then let's not go to the Outerium battlefield so often." Sui Miaozhu smiled and said, "Besides, do you think we're afraid of Song Wuji? It's useless to use Song Wuji to scare people." Chu Li frowned. "Can you guys defeat Song Wuji? So what if Song Wuji is strong?" Sui Miaozhu said lightly, "He is not a great deity after all, he is not invincible." Chu Li said, "Song Wuji can descend as an enlightened master. If the goddess can do it, so can I." Sui Miaozhu said, "There's no need to say any more, just die." Ever since she became the deity king of Asura, the person she wanted to see the most was Chu Li's face, and the person she wanted to deal with the most was also Chu Li. If she could not ruthlessly crush his spirit before killing him, she would feel as if she was walking in the night in luxurious clothes. After all, there were very few masters in the world who could match up to him, and the one he had the most dealings with was Chu Li. If he could suppress and kill Chu Li, it would be the most satisfying. Sui Miaozhu lightly struck with her palm. Chu Li's body was bound, as if the void was obeying her command, and the invisible force around him imprisoned him. He could not move, nor could he use his light body technique, and it was useless even if he tried to struggle. It was as if he was cast in mud, and he could only watch helplessly as she hit him. He could feel the strength of the deity king of Asura, and even if he mobilized the inner energy around his body, coupled with his overwhelming strength, he could not break free. It was as if he had become a piece of meat on a board, waiting to be cut. A palm print instantly condensed in front of Chu Li's chest, and suddenly it was about to hit his chest. Bam! Chu Li's eyes flashed blue, and the god-punishing thunder sword shot out. The palm print instantly disappeared without a trace. His soul energy was strong, and he could turn illusions into reality. Not only could he injure souls, but he could also interfere with reality, dispersing this palm print. Huh! Sui Miaozhu looked at him in surprise. She felt that her palm print was in the bag, but it was blocked. This Chu Li really did have some special skills. After she stepped into the deity king's boundary, it was as if she had entered another world, and it was like she had stepped into another layer of heaven. The difference in strength was like heaven and earth, and Chu Li's cultivation level was not even worth mentioning in front of her. He was no threat at all, and she could finish him off with one palm. After becoming the deity king of Asura, the area within 100 feet around her became her domain. Within this area, she was the master. The void, the earth, the spiritual energy, the air, and even the sunlight were all under her control. Within this area, she was no different from a god, and that was why she was called the deity king. No matter how strong Chu Li was, he could not escape from her palm. Bam! Sui Miaozhu struck with her palm again, and at the same time, the earth trembled slightly. The void once again imprisoned Chu Li, making him unable to move, and even more so, unable to escape. This palm print seemed to have broken through the void and caused an explosion. Suddenly, the silhouette of a black tortoise flashed above Chu Li's body, and condensed in front of him to meet the palm energy. Boom! Amidst the explosion, the ground shook even more violently. The wind howled, and sand and pebbles flew everywhere. The yellow sand was dazzling to the eyes. Sui Miaozhu took a step to the side to avoid the sand, and the smile on her jade-like face disappeared, and she returned to her original coldness. She said slowly, "Chu Li, I've underestimated you." She still did not think that Chu Li could escape death, but she did not expect him to be so difficult to deal with that she could not take him down. Chu Li scoffed. "What an Azura deity king, I'm impressed." His mind turned quickly, looking for a chance of survival. Many of his secret skills were useless at this time, and under the control of the Azura deity king, they were helpless, like a child facing a strong adult. Fortunately, it was only his body that was restrained, and he could not move. He still had the energy of his soul, and it was a powerful energy of his soul. If he wanted to find a chance of survival, he would have to hold her back. Sui Miaozhu frowned and stared at him, and said plainly, "You really have a protective treasure." Chu Li nodded. "This is the ability of the Azura deity king, it's really powerful." Sui Miaozhu said, "How many palm strikes can this treasure of yours withstand?" As she spoke, she lightly struck with her palm. Boom! A loud sound was heard, and the shadow of the black tortoise flashed on top of Chu Li's head again, blocking this palm strike. Sand and pebbles were sent flying. The little beast in Chu Li's mind suddenly opened its eyes, and as it stared, 2 rays of light shot out. TSS! Chu Li's eyes widened, and 2 white rays shot at Sui Miaozhu. Sui Miaozhu could not help but look at him. Roar! Suddenly, a loud roar rang in her ears, and a giant beast appeared in front of her, as if it was standing in the void, and its body was burning with flames, and its eyes were as bright as the sun. She looked straight at it and was instantly dazzled. When she regained her senses, Chu Li had already disappeared. Sui Miaozhu's jade face was as gloomy as ice, and she stared at the place where Chu Li was previously standing. Wherever her gaze landed, the air distorted, and Chu Li's shadow appeared, and his every move was clearly displayed. His body shook, and his clothes fluttered, and then a layer of soft light was emitted from his body, and he suddenly disappeared. Sui Miaozhu took a step forward, and the surrounding air distorted again, and a hazy shadow of Chu Li appeared, his body emitting a soft light. She frowned and took another step forward, and Chu Li's shadow appeared again. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.